Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Preston M. Smith. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm Preston M. Smith, at PMS Artwork everywhere on internet land and socials. I want to thank you for landing on this podcast. Whether you're a professional artist, just getting started in the art world, a collector of art, or just consider yourself a creative person, this podcast has something for you. I like to think of it as a fun way to rant and talk to other creative people about living the life of an artist, surviving and getting ahead in the art world, and enjoying your life. But most importantly, not waiting until you're dead to make it happen. All right, let's get started. Hey.
Hey, what's up, Preston?
How are you doing, man?
I'm doing all right.
Good to see you. I feel like I already know you. I spent like 3 hours combing through your body of work yesterday.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. I could have spent more, man. You're all over the place.
Yeah, that's true. I am.
That's good. That's good. So where are you in Los Angeles?
So I'm actually, my studio is in Ontario, California, which is probably about an hour out of downtown LA, an hour east.
Yeah.
So this is the first time I've lived and worked outside of LA proper,
Yeah.
My studio before was right outside of downtown LA. And I just relocated here because we bought a house out here. So
nice.
I moved my studio out here 5 months ago.
Very cool, man. Congratulations on the house.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I never thought I'd be a homeowner.
It's funny you say that. This thing you're looking at behind me is my wife and my first house too. So we're
awesome, right?
It just happened. So I guess we're both in new places. I'm up in Reseda.
Oh, okay. Right on.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's hot. There might be rolling blackouts, they say. So
you know what? I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. If we lose you, we'll have to pick up once they come back. But
no worries.
I just wanted to thank you for coming on. First of all, I know you're busy. You're doing everything. Like I told you, you're all over the place. But I just wanted to start out by having you describe your work to everybody who doesn't know you. The 5 people that don't know you.
Yeah. How would I describe my work? Well, obviously, I started off as a graffiti artist. So my style is very much derivative of that. But over the years, I've been able to kind of fine tune it and change it into a way where it was marketable and also, develop different styles. So I'm very I'm known for like this really colorful and bold portraits that I do. That's kind of one style that I have. And then I also do these very like surreal type of paintings that involve characters and that I call graffiti spirits. So I do that. And then I also do very, I guess, abstract kind of graffiti type paintings. So my style isn't, I don't think it's just one singular style. Like I said, I do like the portraits is way different than my graffiti lettering pieces or whatever. But the unifying, I guess, factor in my work is just the rich, bold colors that I like to use. And I really go overboard with them sometimes.
Hey, I completely understand. Yeah, I was actually drawn to your stuff because of the bold colors. I see a lot of kind of similarities. We both do some kind of pop surrealist portraiture and some abstract stuff. I love your lettering. But yeah, I kind of looked at you and saw you as like a fauvist street artist kind of. You know what I mean?
Cool.
Like,
thank you.
Yeah, you're like the Matisse of street art.
I like that. That's cool. I'll take it.
You can use it. No, but
I will.
But yeah, and I love your Faces of L.A. thing. I think that's really cool. Instead of having all these well-known celebrity faces all over town, I love how you're kind of giving it to the common man and woman.
Exactly.
I think you did one of your parents, right?
Yeah, I did a huge mural with portraits of my parents in it. And it just so happened that when I did that, it was their anniversary that weekend. And so we revealed it to them on camera, actually, because there was a shoot going on.
Yeah, I saw that.
So that was interesting because I didn't think about the anniversary aspect to it. But yeah, so now they're that was on the outside of my old studio actually. And so it's still there. Hopefully it'll be there for many more years, but who knows
Oh, that's
nowadays.
cool. Well, you've got stuff all over the city. I love on your website how you have like the mural map so people can go check that out, see everywhere you've been. I wanted
Yeah.
to talk to you a little bit about the difference of graffiti art and street art. I know everything's called street art these days. It's funny, I came up being aware of like Basquiat, MTV, all that, all the like the Fab Five Freddy. We have a little connection with Shockbox is a gallery that represents me, and they have Patty Astor as a friend of the gallery. She did
Oh
Fun
yeah.
Gallery. Do you know Patty?
Yep. I know Patty. Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's been doing a lot of stuff with us at Shockbox. She had a
Mm,
solo show over there recently, and we were talking
cool.
about it. But kind of like being aware of street art, graffiti art back in the day, Basquiat, Keith Haring, all these guys.
Yeah.
I know the West Coast also had their own. But what was the
Yeah.
transition like? What made the transition to street art instead of graffiti art? And do you think there still is graffiti art?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I obviously come from the graffiti art world, which predates the street art terminology. Because I started doing graffiti in 1987, and so it was very hardcore. I mean, we had rules and codes and ethics and all this kind of stuff, hierarchy, the whole thing, and that's really, I think, the main difference between street art and graffiti is that graffiti is a culture. Graffiti is it's something that's passed down from one generation to the next. Usually you work alone, but also collaboratively. Usually you're part of a crew, and like I said, there's like codes and ethics, right? There's things that you can do and you can't do. And there's rules to the game and stuff like that. And in street art, when street art started happening, that was like, early 2000s. And when that started happening, really, it upset a lot of graffiti artists because it was kind of like, at the beginning, I think was mostly, hip college design kids who were figuring out that they could post their stuff on the street and be seen, more widely than just in their studio.
Yeah.
So their practice really wasn't on the street. They just put it up on the street. So they design a poster on their computer, or they, sketch something out or whatever, and then they would go to the street and put it up. But they weren't like running the streets. Like they didn't know how to navigate the streets.
Right.
And so that was like, early on, like there was a big friction of graffiti artists versus street artists. Like it was, we weren't friends. And because we just felt like street artists were just taking from us and then reusing it in their own manner to put it up. And then also
like repackaging it.
Yeah, repackaging it, exactly. And then also like the legality of putting up a poster versus doing spray paint on a wall, is very different. Like the type of punishment you receive and the type of jail time you might get is way different. And then to further add to that, most of the street artists that were coming out, not all of them, but I would say a big majority were white affluent kids. And so that also, and in graffiti, we don't look at in my crew, there was white, black, Asian, Hispanic, like in graffiti crews, that's always mixed. Like we don't even look at race that way. But when street art came along, it became so evident that it was like these like college kids who were, doing that stuff. So there's always been a little bit of a friction. I think now it's less because a lot of graffiti artists have also figured out a way to make a living, a way to address their graffiti in a new way, which maybe street artists have opened those doors up for them.
Sure.
So, I still like the term graffiti artist, but I get called a street artist all the time and I don't get offended anymore. So I'm cool with that.
It's interesting. Yeah, graffiti artists almost found a way to get it into the gallery walls, like they did a swap. All these college kids are getting their stuff out on the street, on the walls of buildings, and all the graffiti artists are getting their stuff in the galleries. I mean, that's cool. But I think, do you think maybe part of the reason there was some upset was because they didn't earn it? Like they didn't come up in the streets. They didn't know how to navigate that. They were just using it as a platform to get their work out there.
Oh, totally. That was it. Like I said, graffiti is a culture, and you learn how to navigate the streets. by being on the streets, by being taught and aware of your surroundings and all this kind of stuff. And these street art kids, they didn't care. They were just like, I have this cool poster and I'm going to put it over there. How am I going to do that? I'm just going to buy some glue and stick it up and then let's see what happens, And so, it was a little different. I think a lot of the early on, the graffiti artists were really trying to check them just to like let them know that you just can't come on our streets and just do whatever you want without any prior, assessment of what the culture is and what what it's like to create art on the streets, not just in your studio and paste it on a wall,
You got to earn it. And I think there's a weird little parallel nowadays between that and getting your work online, like using social media. I think there's like a lot of artists now who are like, I'm an artist. I've created 2 pieces. I'm going to start an Instagram profile and show everybody all my work. And it's like, well, no, hang on a second here. You gotta, like my painting professor always told me, you got to put in some time. You can't call yourself an artist till you've created like 50 pieces and maybe even not then, So I like that idea of kind of earning it and paying your dues, whether that's on the street or in galleries or in the studio.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely think I agree. I totally agree. Art is one of those things that no matter how naturally it comes to you, because it did for me very naturally.
Yeah.
But no matter how naturally it comes to you, you have to consistently put in work and consistently get better and consistently like up your game. Because if you don't, like, you'll be forgotten and you'll get swept under the rug with all this other stuff. Because things evolve, right? Like taste evolves, art evolves, and so you have to kind of keep up with that, and in your own true sense, right? It's not like about trying to copy someone else's work or whatever, but it is about like putting in the work so that you master what you do, and everyone else can recognize you for that, And I think that's like a lifelong thing. Like I don't think we ever achieve it. But I think we're always, trying to get to that point, That's why they call it they call it an art practice because, we're always practicing because we never get to the final game.
That's why so many artists who don't like kill themselves end up living so long. It's like, okay, I'm 95 years old. I'm still painting. You know what I mean? I'm going to get there one of these days.
Yeah, totally.
That's awesome. So there's so many things I want to jump into, but I always ask people about their origin story. So maybe that's a good place to kind of start and get people aware of how you came up. Take as long as you want. I might interrupt you if I have some questions if you spark my interest. Start as early as you want. Take as long as you want.
Well, my origin story, I guess, is that of the story of a son of immigrant parents. And so my parents came over here from Mexico in the late 60s. Actually got married in L.A. So they knew each other before, and then they kind of met again when they both came out to L.A. And so I was born oldest son of immigrant parents, born in East L.A. and pretty much grew up in the east side of Los Angeles. So Spanish was my first language. I spoke it at home, and I never really thought about that until later, how it affected me, because I learned English like in first grade. Like by first grade, I was already fluent in English. Mm-hmm. But I remember drawing before that. Like I remember as soon as I got into school, like kindergarten or preschool or whatever, I guess I was in preschool and then kindergarten, I was always drawing. And looking back on it, it was probably because I couldn't communicate with the kids. I couldn't speak English with all the other kids. So I was probably drawing, art's a language, right? So, and I remember that because my mom always tells me about the teachers would call her into to class and say, hey, can you come back to school because we want to show you something? And my mom would think that it's some horrible thing happened to me or something. And then she'd get there and they said, do you know your son can draw like this? And then she's like really, yeah. She was like, oh, that's it. And so there's stories of like, and most of them are just stories from my mother. Like, I don't even remember them firsthand, but of, a teacher asking my mom, can she keep the Halloween drawings that I created, or the solar system that I created for the class or whatever. And it's funny because later on I told my mom, like, why didn't you ever keep any of my work when I was a kid? Like, I don't have any work from when I was a kid. And she said, I gave them to all your teachers. They were always asking for them. I said, yeah, but why didn't you want to keep them? She goes, well, I didn't know you were going to be an artist.
Oh my God.
If I would have known that, I would have kept them. I said, oh, thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom.
So it was funny because, I was always drawing. And, from animals to
By the way,
cars
these
and all
pieces
this
are
stuff.
probably worth some money now. Your teachers are like auctioning these, solar system pieces off.
Yeah, I highly doubt it. But yeah, so I remember I was always drawing animals, cars, whatever. And then when I got to probably like sixth, seventh grade is when like hip hop started in LA.
Yeah.
Well, it started for me. It probably started a few years earlier, but that's when it started getting in the school system.
Right.
So I wanted to be a b-boy. I wanted to be a break dancer. And so I was doing that, and then I realized that I wasn't going to really get much better. And I got to a point where I was like, yeah, okay, I'm not that good. So then I wanted to be a DJ, and then I was hanging out with my friends and DJing. But then I couldn't own my own tables because they were so expensive. My parents they'd never buy them for me. So I was just like, oh, I loved hip hop, and it was funny because I didn't pay attention to the graffiti in hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
It was just part of it, but I never like thought like, oh, I could do that. It wasn't until I got into high school that actually the whole graffiti thing just like fell on my lap, almost literally, because I used to take the bus to school every day, public bus. This kid was tagging on the window of the bus, and I was like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm just doing graffiti. And he literally gave me the marker and was like, go for it. Just don't put your real, he's like, just don't put your real name.
Yeah.
And so that's where I started. As soon as I started doing graffiti on the bus, I was hooked. I was like every day, I'd tell that kid, hey, let me borrow your marker, And then eventually I got my own marker. And then eventually I got bored of tagging buses, and I was like, I want to do the streets. I want to go out and paint on the streets. And back then, kids didn't tell you that they were doing graffiti. It's
right.
not like,
oh yeah,
it's not like now
cool.
where you don't have your name on your hat like you do now. So I had to find some kids in class. Just like asking around. I finally got a hold of a couple kids in my class that were doing graffiti, and then they took me out and they introduced me to other people, and that's how I got in. And as soon as I got into graffiti, I wouldn't say within weeks of doing it on the streets with spray cans, I remember saying like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like,
yeah.
like, I don't know how I'm going to make a living, but this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, because it was so much fun.
Yeah.
I love painting on the streets.
Was there like street cred back then? Like, did people like look up to that and go, oh, this is cool? Were you kind of like a bad boy, or was it just like, we don't talk about it?
No, we didn't talk about it. Chicks went into graffiti.
Really?
Yeah, it's too bad. You're like, I grew up in the wrong generation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but chicks didn't like it. Your parents didn't like it. Your teachers didn't like it.
Yep.
So it was really like you and your peers, you just like did the work and didn't talk about it, and just hung out with other graffiti writers. And but you had to start the bottom, because there's no way to, you learn graffiti by doing it. And so at first you're a toy, and a toy means like you have no style, you don't know how to paint, but you got to start somewhere. So everyone starts off as a toy, and then you move up, right?
Did you start out mimicking other people that you saw?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like when you're a kid, you're like looking at books. Obviously, like the New York trains were just ending around that time, but there was still books from the New York train era that I was looking at. There was the Bible that we had was spray can art, which was
nice.
That was the book that really inspired me, because it started showing graffiti on a global stage, and you were realizing that kids were doing it in Amsterdam. They were doing it in Japan. They were doing it like all over the place.
Yeah.
And so
it wasn't just New York and LA.
It wasn't just New York. It wasn't just LA. And so that's really what like started me thinking like, wow, I want to get really good at this. I want to do bigger, better stuff,
Yeah.
And like I said, at the same time, I've grown up in LA. I'm walking around seeing all these murals by Chicano artists. And so they have these huge murals all over East LA, whatever, that I'm constantly looking at. And in my mind, I was just like the next generation of those Chicano artists, except I was doing it with spray can. It took many years for those two worlds to like actually, come together. But luckily they have, and people see the connection now. And like when I tell people that I'm a Chicano artist, like they don't laugh at me or say like, no, you're not, or whatever. Like, they get it now. It's like, it makes sense now. But yeah, my goal was always to do bigger and better. And I wanted to do huge murals. And I realized that if you're doing it on the side of the freeway, like thousands of people will see them every hour. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that was way better than doing it in your sketchbook where only like 2 or 3 of your friends are going to see it. So, so I started learning how to do graffiti. I started learning the tips and tricks on how to use and manipulate spray cans.
And sorry to interrupt you, but did you start doing a little bit of figurative stuff at this point? Or is this still just like lettering and all that?
So the cool thing about graffiti was that by the time that we started doing it, the figurative was already part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So the lettering is the basis, right?
Yeah.
So everyone has to learn the lettering, but characters were now becoming a thing, and it became a good way to enhance your piece.
Yes.
So you couldn't just be a character guy. You had to be able to do both. You know, and it was still the foundation of graffiti is still in lettering. But that's kind of how I came up with my style too, that I have now is, you have to be unique. You have to be original in the way you do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Or else you're a toy and you're a biter, right? A biter means someone that you steals from other people. And so what I decided to do was like, I said, how could, I love doing figurative stuff, but how can I do it in a way where people will identify that work as mine and it'll be unique to me? And, what was coming out of New York was a lot of like these flat B-boys,
mm-hmm.
which were like these characters, mostly like a side profile, and they had a Kangol hat or glasses, and they were usually like beige or skin color, flesh color with a black outline.
Yeah.
And in LA, we had artists like Hex and Slick, who were two of my favorite artists. They were doing like, oh my God, I mean, like the characters were like so realistic, and they weren't doing outlines anymore. They were just doing shading, almost like airbrush work.
Yeah.
And so that was very instrumental to the way I developed, and seeing that there's another way to paint. But then still I needed to get even more unique. So what I ended up discovering at one point was that if I painted my characters the way I filled in my graffiti letters, then I would have a unique style. And I started messing with that. And first I started messing with like
the
markers.
Fauvism begins.
Right. And so I first started messing around with on paper, with markers, colored pencils, that kind
mm-hmm.
of thing. And I started realizing like, instead of using, and it's funny because I use so much color, but in my mind, when I'm painting, I'm not looking at the color, I'm looking at the value.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that people don't sometimes have a hard time understanding, because they say, wow, you like to use so much color. And I'm like, well, yeah, but it like this needs to be dark on this side. It doesn't need to be green or blue or red. It just needs to be dark.
Yes. Yes.
and then that's the color that plays off the next color, and so on and so forth.
And it gives you the shape.
And it gives you the shape. Exactly. Yeah. And so I realized like, and that probably started happening like in the mid 90s when I started developing that style. And I just ran with it. I was like, okay, I'm just going to try this and keep doing it. And I remember when I did my first mural, my first portrait mural was in Highland Park, in the streets. I got so much positive reaction because people were like, they couldn't understand how I did that.
Awesome.
People were like, oh, I really dig it. And it became right away. I was like, okay, this is it. It's like, one of those light bulb moments, right? When you put it out there to see what people are how they're going to react. And then you're like, okay, they get it. They're liking it. And I needed to explore this some more. So then that's where it started, So, and then also my other characters, which were not portraits, but like just coming out of my mind. My crew that I ran with, that I still hit up, is COI, and it stands for Cause of Insanity.
Oh, nice.
And so that was my major influence growing up. In my crew, we had some guys who were known all over the streets just for their tags and throw ups. They were all city. There was other guys in my crew that were like super well known for lettering. At the time in the early 90s, mid 90s, we were like one of the top crews in LA. And so my crew members really like showed me and taught me a lot about everything. And we would sit together in a room and draw and draw and draw. And so a lot of my letters, started coming out of working together, but then also my characters, because I started like feeling like freedom to like make things elongated and give something, 5 arms instead of 2. And like, because that was part of our crew. We were cause of insanity. So there was like no rules, right? Like
ultimate freedom.
Ultimate freedom. It was the more insane our stuff looked, the more it made sense to our crew. So that had a big play in kind of in my psyche. So yeah, so I just kept going with all those kind of styles, and kept moving forward. And the interesting part to all this, while all this is happening, is like I mentioned earlier, I knew early on that I want to do this for the rest of my life. And I don't know how or whatever, but somehow I knew that I could market my work and that I could sell it and I could make money. No one was making money at graffiti at that time. There was like, I wasn't, I heard like, oh, this guy did an album cover, but it was like a one-off, right?
Yeah, you can't make a living off of one album cover.
Yeah, there was very few people that were making any kind of living with art, let alone with graffiti. But I was determined. And so I started doing stuff, and I started like literally asking neighbors like, hey, can I paint your garage?
Mm-hmm.
And just buy me the paint, and then the next time, hey, can you give me $50 and buy me the paint, And I remember one time I was painting a board at my grandmother's house, and I was up on her driveway, and a car pulled up, and this guy jumped out of the car, and he goes, wow, that's awesome what you're painting. If I brought you a canvas, could you do something like that? And how much would you charge? And I was like, yeah, I could do it. Maybe like $100. And he was like, I'll be right back.
Done.
And he came back with a canvas, and I painted it. And that was the first legitimate art sale I had ever done in my life,
Oh, wow.
And so
you gotten paid for your murals a little bit, but like selling a piece that somebody could take home.
Like selling a canvas, I never sold a canvas before, right?
That's awesome.
And so I remember started telling my friends, dude, like, let's put this on canvas because people will buy it, Yeah. Because in my mind, it's always been like, you have to prove things, right? And so I by someone buying my piece, it proved to me that there's a market out there. It proved to me that somebody wanted to put it in their house and wanted to pay money.
Well, and they approached you.
Yeah, and they approached me.
Yeah.
So that's one person. So, Crazy. I'm not saying we're going to hit everybody, but there's got to be some percentage of people out there who want to do who want the same thing.
There's a market for it. Yeah.
And my friends they fought me tooth and nail. They were like, no, we can't do it on canvas. It doesn't make sense, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward to many, many, many years later, I opened up the very first graffiti gallery in Los Angeles. And now I'm representing all my friends and selling their work.
Crewest, right?
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Crewest gallery in 2002. And so, because the same thing, it was just like, I kept getting, I started, and by the way, I did go to college. I skipped over this part, but I went to college and got a degree in fine art.
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of, that was from 89 to 93. And I figured that I needed an art degree just so that I can differentiate myself from other graffiti writers, right? Yeah. Because now, like, there was more graffiti artists on the streets and stuff like that. But if I wanted to make a living, I had to somehow prove that I was different than any other graffiti artist. And the easiest way I thought was like, hey, I have a degree. That guy doesn't have a degree.
Yeah.
Hire me,
But also like the knowledge you can get from learning about your art history, kind of infusing that into your street art, man. Yeah. That sets you apart.
It did. And, when I went to school, I didn't realize, I was the first one to go to college. Mm-hmm. My parents didn't go to college. Like I said, I was the oldest of three. So I was the first one going into school, and I didn't know what to expect. But I remember being so excited because I'm like, here's all my photo albums and all my graffiti books, and let me show my professors, right? Yeah. Because I know nobody's doing this at the school. And I remember them all looking at it one by one, like in each class. And they were like, oh, that's cool, but why don't you learn the rules before you break them? That was one quote. That was one quote. Another one was like, yeah, that's nice, but you're not going to be able to make a living doing that,
Thanks, someone else teachers.
Yeah. And then someone else was like, you should learn how to do graphic design because you'll always be able to make money doing graphic design, and you can always do your art on the side. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so I got frustrated, but at the same time,
can I say real quick, it's a little bit of like a naysayer in a different way. They're not like saying you can't do this. It's like, you can't do it your way. You have to kind of like fit into this group, Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's right. And so finally I was like, but at the same time, I was like, well, they're getting paid a lot of money to be professors here and
Yeah.
teach. So they must know something that I don't know. So okay. So I ended up being a fine arts major with a graphic design emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then I would put away all my graffiti during the school, and I would just do like the classwork, whatever it was, painting still lives, whatever we were doing. And then at night and on the weekends, I was doing graffiti, right?
Nice.
But I kept them apart.
Moonlighting as a
And
graffiti artist.
yeah, and then but then I started noticing that I was doing really bad at school. Not really bad, but I wasn't doing great. I should have been
Mm-hmm.
doing great. I love art, right? But
Yeah.
I was getting like C's
Mm-hmm.
in my, and I was like, I should be getting A's. Like, this is not what's happening, right? And so I think my junior year, I finally showed one of my professors, one of my design professors actually. He saw me showing my work to somebody, and he came over, started talking, asking me about it and talking about it. And he said, "How come you never showed me this stuff?" And I go, "Because all the other professors told me that it was crap, And he goes, "No, no, no. You have to be doing this in every single class that you do, Like integrate
Yes.
all your graffiti, do it in every single class, whatever class it is, whether it's printmaking or sculpture class or whatever, integrate it." And I was like, so finally someone like gave me like the best
Man.
advice ever. And overnight it changed everything because I did start including all my classwork, my graffiti. And guess what? My professor started giving me A's, you know?
Wow.
And it
These same
totally
professors are
changed.
probably telling you that you can't do it, right?
Yeah, well, these were upper level professors, right?
Oh, wow.
So it was the lower level professors that were trying to like cock block me, I guess. But the these were like senior professors or whatever, and they were like digging what I was doing. And so that was like, okay, this is cool. Now I understand that like I can really do something with this when I graduate, right?
Definitely.
um and of course there was a lot of things that happened, like for example the LA riots happened my junior year, I guess it was 90. Yeah. And
90, was that 92?
92, it was
Yeah.
92. Yeah. And I graduated in 93, but in 92 the LA riots really changed a lot for the art, especially for graffiti art, and especially for what we were doing, because all of a sudden like all these people became aware of this huge issue that was happening for decades in the hood, and no one ever paid attention to it. And now all of a sudden there was full-blown riots because of it, with the whole Rodney King situation.
Mm-hmm.
And now they were like, wait a second, I think we should start listening to the kids in the neighborhoods and the kids who are doing graffiti, and what are they saying and what are they talking about?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden that's what happened. It's they started turning their cameras on us. We started doing exhibitions.
Mm-hmm.
And that really played a pivotal role, I think, in allowing graffiti to flourish in a really quick and dynamic way in the city, where all of a sudden like, let's work with graffiti artists. Like, they have a good message. They're not gang members,
Right.
but they know what's going on in the streets, and we can work with graffiti artists to help change this generational thing that's happening.
Oh, wow.
So
I
it
didn't
was,
realize that connection.
yeah, it was a very a lot of people don't realize it, just because they just don't talk about it. But I became part of like I said, exhibitions that were dealing specifically with police brutality and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. But then also I became involved with like city run organizations that were doing workshops to reach out to kids and help them express themselves. And like during the summer, instead of having them run around with gangs, it was like, can we do workshops and work with these kids? And so we were the professors. Like, the graffiti artists
Nice.
became the professors that the city hired for workshops like that.
Wow. It
And
almost
then
reminds me of
also,
like the works program of like, the abstract expressionist movement, where they were, the
yeah,
city was kind of putting them to work, giving them something to
yeah,
do and focus
right.
their talent. It's kind of similar.
It is similar, and it happened. It happened very naturally, I think. And luckily, a lot of the people that I was hanging out with were some of the players who had like, they were curators, they were collectors, and they were also city people who were very much trying to do something good for the city.
Mm-hmm.
And they were arts educators. And so I happened to know these mix of people, and I got brought in a lot to do that with other artists as well, not just me, but all that is to say that I started realizing like there's actual path here to make a living,
Yeah.
like whether it's working with kids and creating community murals or selling my art at galleries or whatever, there is a path to a career. And I just kind of just jumped on it and started doing it. And I'm one of those type of people that doesn't get very complacent with where I'm at with things.
Mm-hmm.
And so when things kind of started going my way and things started happening, I kind of doubled down and try to do more, And so when I graduated was in 93 from college. In 94, I had my first solo exhibition.
Oh, wow.
In 94. Yeah. And then in 94, I also had my first appearance in the museum exhibition.
Nice.
And then I also got married.
I like how that's third.
Yeah. Well, because, what happened is like, I've been, my wife now for over 26 years now.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. We were dating for a while and all through college and stuff. And so when I got on this road, like, okay, I'm doing this, I kind of turned around and like, are you on board or not? Because this is what I'm doing. I'm going to be a full-time artist and this is it. And I'm getting my shit together here. So like, I'm doing exhibitions, I'm doing solo stuff, I'm getting in museums, like, let's go. So she was like, yep.
She saw the whole progression, man.
Yeah. It's
awesome.
Funny because she, I mean, obviously she's way smarter than I am, but it's like, I remember like telling her one time, like, when at some point, you're going to be able to just like stay at home and be a mom.
Yeah.
And I'll be bringing in all the dough. And obviously at the time when I was saying this, we had like a single apartment, and I was just painting at home while she was working full time.
Yep.
I didn't even have a car, and I'm telling her all this stuff. And, fast forward later, when I opened up the gallery, she quit her job and was working for me as my accountant for the gallery and then raising our kids. And so I remember one time I told her, I said, see, I told you it was going to happen at some point, And she goes, why do you think I stuck with you? You think I didn't believe you or what? Like
you had to kind of plant the seed and water it a little bit, over the years. My wife and I are similar, and I keep telling her, because she works at UCLA. I'm like, one of these days, you're going to quit your job and you're going to be working for me. It's like, all right, we'll see. So
the only bad part to that whole story is that after 10 years of running the gallery and I closed the gallery, she immediately went back to work.
Oh.
And she said, you were the worst boss ever. So, luckily we're still married, but she's like, I'm not working for you anymore. You were the worst boss ever. So I was like,
that's
all right,
true.
Fair enough.
My wife and I have done some website design together, and it goes really well for like the first hour and a half, and then it just falls, But what a story, man! It sounds like you were kind of, well, first of all, what a leap of faith to be like, okay, I see something. First of all, art in general is a leap of faith, right? I can make a living doing this. For me too, I was like, I can make a living doing this. Everyone's like, yeah, don't give up your day job.
Yeah.
But taking that a step further in that era, doing graffiti work, street art, seeing a future with that is it's like doubling down on the leap of faith. So but it also seemed like you were kind of in the right moment. You had a couple things that hit at that time, and you were able to capitalize that. And I'm not saying that's easy, because it's not easy. You were one of the probably one of the few who actually capitalized on it, was able to turn the corner up in your game. Because I like that about you. I've always liked the kind of hustle aspect of it. That's kind of like the artist that I have on here. You almost answered my first 3 questions already. I was like going to ask you, how did you turn the corner from graffiti art to this?
Yeah.
You kind of answered that. I wanted to tell you we have a couple connections, aside from the whole Shockbox, Mike Collins fun gallery thing. I went to school at Gonzaga University, another Jesuit college. I got my
So,
and then I used to work like right down the street from LMU and Playa Vista as a waiter for many years. So I'd always look up, up there, And then the other one is the Vans Warped Tour. I'm interested in hearing about that, because my band in college, we were in a punk ska band, and we did the Warped Tour. We did a couple legs of the Warped Tour. What year was this? I'm curious.
I did the Warped Tour in 2001.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I think we were 2000. So you were there when like what, 311 was there?
Yeah, 311 was the headliner.
You never did
One of the
Green Day?
no, Green Day was not there. I think it was Blink 182 at one point.
Yes.
And then 311 and
we did 2 years. I think we were there when you were in Blink 182. I don't know if they were headlining, but it was like Weezer was there and Blink 182. I got to see all my favorites like NoFX and a bunch of LA bands.
Yeah, NoFX is always on there.
So good. I remember I approached what's his name? I can't remember his name now. Man, the lead singer, I can't remember. We get so much shit for this. But anyway, I went and approached him with our demo and he just looked at me and he like turned around and walked away. I was like, that's a good lesson right there.
Yeah.
Keep going. But you were doing like what, live paintings though at the Warped Tour, yeah?
Yeah, so that was like a dream job, except for the 110-degree weather through most of the Midwest,
God, yeah.
But it was a situation where actually what happened is I got called before the Warped Tour started, and I got offered, hey, you want to go on tour with the Warped Tour, blah, blah, blah. And I had a manager at the time, and she was negotiating with them and, told them what it would cost for me to be on the road for 6 weeks. Right.
Yeah.
And the thing was that I was working for Pontiac, and Pontiac had this awesome new car called the Vibe. The Pontiac
People are like, so, what is it?
Yeah. Oh man. And so the whole point of this tour was Pontiac Vibe had a stage, like a little mini stage, and they were going to have an artist painting live this huge canvas. And then they were going to have like some models and chicks trying to get people from the audience to come up with with the name of the color of the car. Like that was the whole campaign. It was like, it was like, what's your vibe? I think that was like what it was called or something. And so you had by the end of the tour, they were gonna name the car. Like that was the big deal, right? I was like, whatever. So, okay. But I'm on stage in a mini stage, amongst the madness that is Warped Tour, right? There's like 6 stages, 50,000 people. It's just insanity. And so when I got offered the project, my agent, was negotiating and they turned me down. They were like, you're too expensive, like, we're not going to do it. You're too expensive. So I didn't get it. And the Warped Tour started. And so like a week into the Warped Tour, I get a call from them again. And they're like, hey, remember we called you about this Warped Tour thing? We're willing to pay you what you asked for,
Nice.
We need you on the tour. And I was like, okay. And they're like, can you be on a plane tomorrow?
Hell yeah.
And be gone for 6 weeks, right?
Oh my God.
And so, what happened is they had hired this like 19-year-old kid out of New York to do it. And basically the kid wigged out.
Yeah.
He didn't have the chops, and he was on stage
19.
and he's 19 and he's looking at like a sea of 50,000 people staring at him. And the canvases were huge. They were like 10 feet tall by 20 feet wide, each canvas. And you had that day to finish it. So roughly from like noon to 6 p.m. roughly. So you had 5-6 hours to finish the painting, and he couldn't finish the painting.
Yeah.
And he literally wigged out one night and was like, I'm gone. And he got on the train. He did. He got on the train and went back to New York. So they called me all freaking out. And so it was awesome because now we had the upper hand. And one of the things we asked for was my own trailer, right? I wanted my own RV, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
And so at first they didn't want to give it to me, but then they agreed. So I had a driver and me in this giant RV, right? Like a 2-bedroom RV. And we drove city to city for 6 weeks. And every city I painted a gigantic canvas.
Oh, wow.
And the only rules that they gave me was paint something that has to do with that city, right?
Okay. That's cool.
So it was very loose. It was total interpretation of whatever I wanted to do. No one had to sign off on it. So I would just wake up in the morning, I have a sketchbook, and I'd be like, oh, okay, we're in Detroit now. Okay, well, let's see what I'll do for Detroit,
Yeah, cars.
And I would just paint it. And it was an awesome experience. It was so much fun. It's like for 6 weeks, I thought I was a rock star, because no one,
well,
no
you
one
kind of
was,
were. That's like the lifestyle.
well, it was totally the lifestyle. And like, like no one was there for me. But once you're on stage and you're in the middle of all this, you feel like they're there for you. Right.
Right.
But it was pretty interesting. A lot of interesting stuff happened. Like when I was in New York, I probably had the biggest crowd just on my stage, because everyone in New York, who loves graffiti was there.
Oh yeah.
And there's some interesting stories that I was just like, oh my God. But yes, I got a little taste of being a rock star on the road, and it wasn't as much fun as it was a lot of work. It was
a grind.
It's a grind.
Yeah.
It's a grind. And unfortunately, what didn't happen is I didn't get to hang out and party with all the bands, because as you may know, after each show, they would do a huge barbecue and a huge, hangout backstage and everything like that. Well, my driver wasn't really a driver. He was actually like a model and a spokesperson for like this agency. And he just took on the job because the agency that hired me said, "Hey, do you want to drive this guy around?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure. Why not?" Right. I got a whole summer to kill. Right. And so he couldn't drive at night like the way the truck drivers were doing it. Right.
Oh man.
So as soon as I finished painting, we'd pack it up and we'd head to the next city so that we can get to a hotel and chill out. So most of the time I didn't get to hang out with all these like dope artists, like all the musicians and stuff. A few nights we did, but yeah, those guys was like a crazy party, like every single night.
Oh yeah.
And
it was being invited back to some of the trailers, smoking some weed, and we met Billy Joe Armstrong, which is really cool. He's like, "Come on in here, little guy with a big head," being backstage at some of those huge main stages. I think we watched Suicide Machines and Green Day, a couple other bands, and man, that's something else. That is enough I can understand why this kid had a panic attack.
Yeah.
So here's the question: did you get to keep the canvases?
No, so I didn't. And this was kind of this is the part that sucked, is that what was supposed to happen is there was a nonprofit back in LA that was going to receive all the works that I did on stage, and they were going to have a big gala event, and they were going to auction off all the paintings. Right.
Oh, wow.
And so obviously Pontiac and the agency they're working with was supposed to handle all that. Well, the show was over. 6 weeks later, it was done. And I think those canvases just ended up in some warehouse somewhere. And that was a wrap,
So you don't even know where they are now?
I have no idea where they are, if they survived. They probably didn't. They probably got thrown away somewhere.
Man, that sucks.
And that whole aspect of the nonprofit angle never came to be, And so I was really bummed, number one, because like if they weren't going to do it, I would have loved to have kept all those pieces. I mean, I don't know what I would have done. They weighed a ton. It was like a giant, not giant. Like it was like a 12-foot trailer behind the RV that was pulling all these canvases. I mean, they weighed a ton, but still, there was some really good pieces in there.
Those are probably worth a lot of money.
There was some really not so great pieces in there, but there was a couple that were pretty good. So,
well, you can't be gold every time you get up there, but I'm sure there were some good ones. I bet those, you said what, 20 by 20 or 20 by 12, you said?
They were 10 feet tall and 20 feet wide.
Okay.
Yeah,
oh my God.
10 by 20. But the other thing too, is that there was no social media back then. Right.
Right.
So that was, if there was social media, I would have been like a online star within minutes, because
no question.
I was hanging out with all these guys. I was doing this stuff in front of people. Imagine 50,000 people, with their phones out.
You painting, showing the crowd behind you.
Yeah, but none of that happened because this was pre-social media.
Yeah, right.
so
it's like, what did you do today?
Photos.
Oh yeah, this was my day.
Yeah. So I had like my own camera, and I would just take pictures of stuff, and that was it. That's all that I have. I have some 35 millimeter. I have a lot of photos, but that's all I have. I have like no video. I have no other proof of that whole event.
The venue has to have some of that stuff somewhere, right? Like they had to have. I think they videotaped some of that stuff. Yeah, maybe.
I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know.
Look, 10 years down the road, some of these paintings are going to resurface. Unknown Man One paintings. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun. I mean, the Warped Tour is crazy. Did you ever go to the Gorge or Boise, Idaho?
Yeah.
The Gorge was a cool venue. That was one of my favorites. I'm telling you,
Yeah,
we might have like bumped elbows at a couple of these. That's pretty
maybe.
cool. Yeah, I was going to Gonzaga at the time, and I was an Idaho kid, so it's just cool to have you in that neck of the woods. But
Yeah,
so
yeah, no, that's for sure.
I wanted to go kind of in chronological order. I know I screwed that up, but tell me about.
Yeah,
I keep saying Crewest, but it's Crewest.
Crewest, yeah,
Crewest, yeah.
Crewest,
So
whatever,
tell me
doesn't
about this
matter.
gallery. You did this. You opened this to represent graffiti artists at the time, right? And I know you represented like
Yeah,
Crayola and Retina, right?
yeah. So what happened is in the 1990s, like mid 90s to late 90s, I was sending, back then you had to send slides to galleries.
Oh yeah,
So
I remember.
this is before internet and everything. And so I would send out my package to all these galleries all over the place. And whenever I'd see a gallery that was working with a graffiti artist or with some kind of cool hip artist that I could relate to, I'd reach out to them because there wasn't many galleries like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd reach out to them and be like, hey, can you check out my work? I'd love to show in your gallery. And most of the time the response was, you're a graffiti artist, your stuff belongs on the streets. It's not really, it won't sell in a gallery setting.
Right.
So thank you, but no thank you. And I kept getting that over and over and over. Now, meanwhile, I was exhibiting in places in LA, but they were usually like, pop-ups, right? Like stuff that we took over an abandoned building and we did our own show. Or once in a while, it was a small gallery in LA that would let us do a group show or something. But it was nothing major, but there was some gallery stuff happening. So when these other galleries, bigger galleries, were rejecting my work, I was like, they're not saying my work isn't good. They're just saying we can't sell it. And they're just saying that there's no market for it, according to them. But they're wrong.
Lack of imagination,
Yeah, it's like, I know there's a market because I'm selling and I'm doing all this other stuff. So they're just not there. They're the wrong place to be. So finally, like in 2000, so in 2000, actually, I started Crewest.com. Mm-hmm. And I started the website because as I started getting more and more projects happening, I became the go-to guy from a lot of corporate companies to do all kinds of stuff like design posters and airbrush cars and all this stuff that I didn't know how to do and that I couldn't do.
Right.
But I had other friends who were good at those kind of things. So I decided, instead of keep telling these companies, no, I don't do that. I just do spray can. I just do murals. I started saying, yeah, I could do that. And then I would take the gig and then I would hire one of my friends to do the gig. And then I would make a commission off of it. Mm-hmm. So that started working. So I started a website called Crewest.com. And at the time, that's all the website was so that I can showcase all my friends and their abilities and all the different types of art that I represented under Crewest.com. And that started working. In 2002 was when I finally decided to open my own gallery, because it came as a result of me traveling to Europe a lot. Mm-hmm. And seeing the awesome paint that they were using in Europe. And we had shitty ass Krylon, Right. And like Krylon was like the worst paint ever, but that's all we had. So I reached out to a company, Molotow, it's in Germany. And I said, hey, how can we get your paint here in the States? Because, every time I go to Germany, like, I love your paint. You have like 200 colors instead of like the 30 that Krylon offers, right? How can I get it? And they said, well, actually, we're going to be opening up a North American headquarters. Do you want to be a dealer of the paint?
Fuck yeah.
And so I was like, well, I know I want the paint. That means other people want the paint.
Yep.
So yeah, I'll be a dealer. What I got to do? So they told me how much money I needed to buy in as a dealer. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have that money. So I ended up getting a partner who had the money, and we couldn't sell it out of the back of my truck. So we needed a space. So we opened up Crewest Shop and Gallery.
Wow.
So the whole point of the shop was to sell paint. And since I had white walls, I was also going to, why not do exhibitions?
Yeah.
And so I started my own gallery and shop. And that was in 2002. It just like blew up. It just like started like a whole thing. And I knew I was going to be like what do you call it? Kind of like a lightning rod,
Yes.
Of
Like a
attention
conduit
from
or something.
everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, cops started coming over. They started sending undercover cops into my shop. They were trying to bust kids, saying that we were selling spray paint to minors.
Oh, wow.
When we opened up in Alhambra, which is a little area right east of downtown,
Mm-hmm.
and very quiet residential area. But that's where I grew up, so I knew everyone there, and it was easy to do it there. Well, the mayor of that city came in, had a closed door meeting with me one day because he was wondering like why I was promoting graffiti. And I said, I'm not promoting graffiti, I'm promoting graffiti art.
Right.
And I'm promoting the art form. And I said, and he says, yeah, but you sell spray paint. I said, yeah, but it's like $6 a can. Like your local kid who wants to tag on the walls is going to go to Home Depot and buy 99-cent cans.
Right.
So why don't you go talk to Home Depot and tell them to stop selling 99-cent cans, right? Anyway, so I was able to talk my way through this meeting with the mayor, and he walked away feeling like, okay, as long as you keep doing what you say you're doing, we'll support you because this is, it's all positive. Long story short, we outgrew that 700 square foot space very quickly, and we relocated to downtown LA.
Right.
Where I opened up a 2,500 square foot space, and that like totally changed the game for me and for the city and for graffiti, because there was other galleries that had popped up before here and there, but they were usually like short-term galleries.
Mm-hmm.
But this was the first time that we had an actual, real 9 to 5 gallery, with changing exhibitions every single month. So I ran it for 10 years and represented like over 2,000 artists.
Wow.
And did over 100 exhibitions, and I probably curated about 85% of them myself. So
that's a big job.
I didn't know what I got into until it was already like too late, So by 2012, I was like, 2011, there was the Art and Street show at Mocha.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, we were just like, you know what? This is what we wanted. We wanted to prove to everybody that this was a viable art form. And now that it's in museums, like we're kind of like, I think we're done because we kind of showed the world, like, yeah, right? Like, okay. And also it was a thing where, I was still making a living as an artist full time.
Yeah.
And the gallery, we were just trying to stay afloat, and, galleries are really, really tough business. And
it's tough.
And my recommendation is, if you're not a millionaire, don't open one, because it's a fun hobby. It's a fun hobby if you have the luxury to do it that way.
I'm working with a gallery right now in Hermosa Beach, and Mike Collins, who owns it, he's doing a great job. But yeah, it's tough, man. It is tough. It's a constant grind.
It's nonstop because people don't realize, like, you're promoting the next exhibition while you're running the current exhibition and trying to make sales. Yep. And you're returning the artwork and dealing with the payouts from the previous exhibition. And it's like this, if you stop at any moment, everything gets backed up, and it's a mess. So anyways, it finally got to the point where in 2012, I said, you know what, I'm running myself too thin here. And really what I love being an artist,
Was it taken away from your time to create?
Yeah, it was. And it was also not letting me enjoy what I was doing while I was creating. So I would go do this really incredible project for a client or for a collector or whatever. And I had to do it as fast as I could so I can get back to the gallery and do the next thing. I had to turn down, like, hey, come to Europe for 3 weeks to do this amazing event. And I'm like, I can't be gone for 3 weeks. Like I can go for a week maybe, but I can't go for 3,
Yeah.
So stuff like that was happening. And then also
kinda
like
anchors you down a little bit.
Totally anchored me down. And, it was just me running it with my partner. And really it was me, because my partner didn't have any experience in selling art or anything like that. And so, I had some interns and some help and this and that. But at the end of the day, I was running the whole show, and it became this huge weight on my shoulders, to the point that when I finally closed the gallery, I think I had PTSD for like a good 6 months, because every like Saturday morning I'd wake up like, I got a show tonight, I got an exhibition, what I gotta do. And then I'd be like, oh no, I could go to the beach. I could go watch a movie tonight. Like that's like, I never did that. Right.
And I bet you money though, because I know this feeling. I bet you it was not easy for you to settle back into that. I'm sure you filled that time with some other creative stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what ended up happening but it was good because I opened up my own studio after that. And what happened is all those 10 years of contacts, of collectors, of media, all that, I kept all that.
Yeah.
So when I opened up my studio, I kept running my studio like it was a gallery, right? Like I kept inviting people. I kept doing events. I just kept those connections, political connections, and all that. And so now I funneled all that into my own personal career, which was way more satisfying. And one of the reasons is like I love, I'm a graffiti artist fan first before I was even a graffiti artist myself. I was a fan of the work, right?
Yeah.
And so I got to work with a lot of my heroes. Like so when I did the gallery, I could invite whoever I wanted to invite to show. And I was inviting people from overseas. I was inviting people from New York. I was inviting people from LA who I looked up to and respected and all that. And so it was really awesome to be able to do that. But at the same time, I realized some of these people that I looked up to, and even just some other artists, they weren't great business people,
No. Oh my God.
Yeah. And so it was really difficult to work with people sometimes when they just didn't get it. And you're trying to make a business and trying to make money for yourself and for them, and they don't see that, and they don't understand how it works.
And there's a little pressure to deliver too.
Yeah. And so and they wouldn't take my advice sometimes, because I'd be like, look, I know you want to sell a $25,000 piece, but
who doesn't?
But I don't have the collectors that are going to probably spend that much money. Now, if you price something at about $2,000 to $4,000 to $5,000, that's different. They're like, yes. No, I want $25,000 for this piece, and I've never shown anywhere before. This is my first time showing at a gallery.
Dude,
right?
Nobody's gonna buy this for $30,000. And then also, do you really want to send this and insure a piece for $30,000? No.
Right. And they would get mad, and I would tell these guys, I said, look, trust me, I want to sell your piece for $100,000 because I get 50%. Like I'm going to get half of it.
Right.
So there's no incentive for me to sell it for cheaper. But they just, people don't understand the art market. They don't understand how sales works and all that. And so that got kind of old after a while, and always fighting with people. And, and I got to say, that was probably about, 30% of the artists I worked with. The other 70% were cool and they were like, whatever. But sometimes you dealt with a lot of egos and stuff like that. So going and opening up my own studio was awesome because it was like, I don't got to deal with any of those egos. I'm not competing against any of those guys or trying to make them happy or whatever. It's just about me, and I already know how this works. And so, so it was really...
You're taking everything you learned from this whole process, all the connections you made, the contact list, and you're filtering it, funneling it through your studio. That's smart. I mean, that's the natural progression.
Yeah. And that's still what I'm doing. And even now, I mean, just yesterday, I had an artist come here yesterday to my studio, and he started asking me about representing him, and being his agent.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that all the time because I ran the gallery. People know that I understand, even just filling out a contract, something simple like that. Like most artists are like scared. Like, I don't want to sign this contract. I don't know what it means, blah, blah. And so, so I still get hit up all the time just to represent them and to do this and do that. And, sometimes I will. Sometimes I'll be like, yeah, it's worth it. I'll rep you on this gig and I'll take a cut.
Yeah.
But most of the time I don't, just because, I just want to stick to what I'm doing and worry about my own projects. I mean,
you don't want to get like sucked back in,
Yeah. It's so easy to get sucked back in.
For sure.
And so I'm trying to kind of avoid that. Now, there is one thing is that, that those 10 years from 2002 through 2012 were very pivotal in downtown LA and in the art scene in LA, and especially for graffiti and street art.
Yes.
So that chapter for me is a really important chapter. And, I'm trying to kind of revisit that era and that time in different ways. And we're working on stuff right now because there's a lot of documentation that happened back then that like I said, it was before social media, most of it. So
it's almost like it was the equivalent of social media.
Yeah, it was, and
Yeah.
it was like because I remember people telling me like, when you close your gallery, what are we gonna do? Like, this is where we meet every Saturday night, you know.
Right. Right.
And so anyways, so now I'm kind of like doing a couple things, you know. I want to put some publications together, maybe some video stuff, and now use social media to kind of re-engage all that happened at that during that era, and you know, just a little bit, just more, just to reminisce and to also show people like, hey, there's history to these artists,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And to the art form and stuff. I mean, like some of the names you just mentioned, you know, there's a lot of artists that, you know, I mean, we used to sell Crayola paintings for like $300.
Oh my God.
Could you imagine?
Those
You know,
lucky people who bought that, you know?
and so it's like, you know, it's just amazing to see, and I'm really proud of the artists that we worked with and what we did for the culture and all that. You know, I never wanted to be a gallery that was, you know, trying to do any kind of, you know, that I didn't want to represent people like just solely. I've probably blanked out on the word, but like sole representation for artists. You
Oh,
know,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be a gallery that was kind of like a stepping stone. It was like your way into the art world, right? So like we would have exhibitions with like, you know, someone like Chaz Bajorquez and this new kid that I just met the week before, who was like 18 years old and had these dope little like stickers, right?
Right.
So I would do exhibitions like that, and I would
Like equal
allow artists.
opportunity, you know, depending on
Yeah,
your career level of career or quality.
yeah, and I've had so many artists over the years tell me like, you know, your gallery was the very first place I sold a piece, you
Wow.
know,
That's
like
cool.
and that's very satisfying. And you know, because what I was able to get when I was in art school, or just in, you know, in my community at that time, and I was able to like visualize that I could do this. I was able to actually, during the time of the gallery, like physically show kids that you could do this. Like, look, you came in, here's your art, now it's sold. Like, this is
Which
how
is
it works.
actually more than what school does, because I don't know about you, but when I was there, they
Yeah.
didn't teach you anything about the business of art. Nothing.
No, nothing about, you know, that I never understood like why why they did that.
Maybe they didn't
But
know. You know what I mean? I don't know.
no, I think it's a little bit more sinister than that, actually.
Maybe. Yeah, you're probably right. Yep.
You know, like I think art, like if schools actually taught you business, then you'd realize like, wow, this is a really tough business. Like, this is like,
Yeah.
I might not make it. Like
I'm not going to pay
maybe,
my tuition anymore for this bullshit.
yeah. I think I'm gonna switch majors, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So I think that's a lot, that has a lot to do with it. But anyways, yeah. So I mean, I felt really good that running the gallery, I was able to like mentor kids and young people and young artists into like having the vision that like they could do this. You know, I mean, there's several artists that I showcased at the time who have since then opened up their own spaces,
Oh, cool.
and they always tell me that they model it after Crewest, you know. And so
Nice.
that's awesome, you know. And so like I can't be more proud of it than that, you know. But yeah,
You
it
could
was
probably do
definitely
a great retrospective of your time at Crewest.
oh yeah, I mean that's like one of the things that we're thinking about, and you know, hopefully in a few years, you know, this pandemic actually like slowed down a lot of ideas for everybody,
Oh, yeah.
um but that's on the horizon for sure. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, since you brought up the pandemic, I always ask all the artists how it affected them. I just had Amy Smith on. I think she might have met you. Do you ever go to Gaba Gallery?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think she was saying she met you at Gaba Gallery. Anyway, she does some street
yeah.
art, and she was talking about how
Cool.
at the beginning it was like, well, what are we doing? And then one of her friends said, this is essential work. Art is essential work. And then they started to just see that there was so much freedom to do stuff outside. There's nobody outside. So did you do a lot of mural and street art during the pandemic, or did it kind of shut you down a bit?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of stuff happened, obviously just in general,
Mm-hmm.
but then also personally, a lot of stuff happened to me
Oh, okay.
that year. And what ended up happening is I went from being you know, booked for like the next 6 months come January of 2020, right? Whatever,
Mm-hmm.
to all of a sudden like completely dried up. Like all my corporate clients backed out of everything. You know, my source of income for the following 3 months were completely gone.
Oh
So I
man.
literally lost like 95% of all my gigs. And it was going to be some pretty cool
Whew.
gigs. Like I was going to do like opening day at Dodger Stadium
Oh,
with
really?
yeah, with the big shoe company.
And that's a big year to be doing it too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So anyways, a lot of stuff fell through and it was really demoralizing. But luckily I had one big client and I was doing a huge mural for him that was going to be installed in his office, actually his facility. It's a like 76-foot mural,
Oh my God.
um, 14 feet high. And so that's what I worked on for like the better part of the year. And that one client really was like an art angel
Hmm.
because he pretty much allowed me to continue working and painting on that mural in my studio, right? For months and months
That's
until it was
great.
finished, like later part of last year. So really like, that project saved my life because I didn't have any other gigs, and any other gigs that came up were so small and everything that it was like, not that
Not
great,
worth it. Wow.
not worth it. But obviously like that one gig, even though that wasn't all my income that I was expecting, at least it was something that was coming in. And then also luckily, I mean, to be honest, the whole EDD and being able to finally like get money for unemployment as
Yeah.
a 1099 worker, like that was huge. That
That
helped
saved
so
a
much
lot of
too.
artists. Yeah.
That saved a lot of people, and I'm thankful that, even though there's a whole other story with that, because I even though I qualified, there was some problem with my paperwork, and someone tried to like use my identity.
Really?
So I didn't get my first EDD payment till like I want to say September or October of that year.
Wow. I actually gave up. I couldn't get it because at the beginning they were
Yeah,
saying, "Oh, just apply for unemployment." And I'm a sole
yeah,
proprietor, I'm the artist,
yeah,
and it was like
yeah.
they didn't have anything for us at the beginning. So like
Not at the
Newsom was just
beginning.
like,
No.
"Just apply for it. You'll probably get
Yeah,
it." I didn't get it, and then I had to
yeah.
reapply, and they're like, "This will supersede what you did before." Didn't work. It just confused everything. So I was like, "Fuck it." I just put my head down and kept working, but
Oh
I didn't get
wow.
it. I didn't get anything.
No, well,
I'm
I
glad you
luckily I
eventually
did.
did. Yeah.
I eventually did, and we had some very tough moments there. But so all that was crazy. The financial part was crazy and all that. But then on top of all that, I also had a really big family issue that that came up that I had to take care of, and that was something I wasn't ready for.
Yeah.
And so that, along with everything else that was going on, didn't put me in a very creative mood, you
Right.
know and so it was really a struggle just to do anything artistic or creative during all those months, especially during last summer.
Yeah.
But we got through it, and somehow, some way, we made it happen, and we succeeded, and we're here now. We're still alive. I'm still alive, and the family made it, and we,
Oh, good.
so I feel really blessed that everything worked out. But it was an extremely, extremely tough year, probably the toughest year I've ever had, not just financially.
Hmm.
Also, obviously, I lost some family members because of COVID, and then also
I'm
just
sorry to
with
hear that.
mental health issues.
Yeah.
Like I had never had to deal with mental health issues before, with either my mental health or my close family members' mental health, and that became a situation last year that we had to deal with. And so on so many levels, it was a really, 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 really heavy year.
So many
um
people had that same thing. Even I went
yeah,
through a huge bout of depression. But anyway, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry to hear about your family, and I'm
yeah,
glad you guys were able to pull through, though.
yeah. And so now it's like, it feels like, wow, we're finally, I feel like we're at the other end of it now, and like, let's get back to work. And things are going to be
Yeah.
different moving forward, I think, but it's better than they were this this last year.
Can I
So
ask a question? Because I do a lot of stuff with online. I mean, I've been doing galleries for years too, but
yeah.
I sell a lot of my work, probably 60% of my work, 70% of my work online.
Oh,
It
it's
was just,
awesome.
it was one of the things that I did to kind of take the power out of the gallery hands and just, put it in my own. So
Yeah.
I see that you do online stuff. I see that you have like merchandise, a lot of stuff that you sell. Were you able to sell any of that during the pandemic? And is that something you're going to be focusing on at all?
Oh yeah. I mean, luckily I was set up in that way. That's another thing. A lot of artists weren't set up
At all?
digitally, right?
Yeah. Yep.
and they had no online presence other than their Instagram or something.
Right.
And so no, I still, I'm constantly selling. I don't sell as much work as you do online, which I'd love to get to that point. So maybe we can talk later about
let's talk
some ways of getting there. But I do sell work online, and I do sell a lot of merch.
Yes.
And so at the time there was a lot of merch moving, and it was funny because as soon as the pandemic started and whatever, actually in backtrack, 2 years earlier, I was in Japan, and every time I go to Asia, people always wear masks. It's just part of the culture. I remember being in Japan a couple of years ago, and I was like telling my friend, I go, everyone wears these like generic masks. I should do some graffiti on the masks and sell them here. And he was like, "That's a great idea. You should do it." Of course, I came back to LA and just like whatever, and then I didn't follow through on that, right? I didn't follow through on that, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hits, and now I'm like, okay, remember the idea I had? So
now's the time.
So I designed all these masks right off the bat, and I remember my first order of masks was like almost $2,000 worth of masks.
Wow, really?
Like the very first order. And I was like, okay, well, this is going to definitely help.
Oh my God.
So the mask was something that obviously like been selling all year, but also like prints were selling very well. Designs on t-shirts were selling, things like that. So I've always kept the merch game going on.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I learned at the gallery, right? To always keep the merch thing going. But selling my original works online, I've always had a battle with that. Number one, because most of my work is fairly large, is one issue. So shipping and all that kind of stuff, right? But then also when I sell to collectors, I have this. I like the personal aspect of selling to people.
For sure.
Like the merch doesn't really matter, but to me, a painting, right, that I've slaved over or whatever, and I want to know where it's going. I want to know who's buying it. I want to talk to them, right?
Yeah.
And so that's been one thing that's kind of hard to navigate online. Except like what I do now is most of my online sales for original art, I don't have prices on there, but they can inquire, and then I'll sell it to them, kind of like after I speak to them, or we email back and forth kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't have my prices out there, and you can't just click and buy it,
Right.
But maybe there might be a series of paintings that might be smaller and more accessible, and maybe I will do that. But so I'd be interested to talk to you about that later, because that's
sure,
always
man.
Fascinates me.
But I think also you do so well because I know you like to have that personal connection with people, and that's how my collector base, the one it's thriving, are multiple like repeat collectors that I've developed a relationship with, because you get a rapport, they get to know you, they get to know your story. So there is a way to do it. It's just not quite as easy.
No,
but we'll talk.
For sure.
Yeah, it was weird because I was on your site, I was looking at the blogs, and I saw, I think the last show blog was like the Bruce Lurie Gallery 2020. It was like January. And then I saw nothing else. And I was like, oh man.
Nothing else.
That's so, I mean, of course it made sense because there was no shows, but I'm glad you were able to get through it. I know a lot of artists didn't. And I know a lot of artists have no digital game like you talked about. And I saw a mad scramble for people to start getting up online. And now I think it's going to be interesting because I think it's going to be a little bit flooded. The market's going to be a little flooded online. So we're going to have to kind of navigate that next. I want to be mindful of your time. I know we've been like an hour and 20 minutes. I don't know how long you got, so I can hit you with some quick. Okay, cool. Because I want to hit you. We've left out so much. You've had such a long, good career. I wanted to give you a couple options of things that you could talk about. I know you've done a couple books. Like, what's this L.A. Graffiti Black Book?
Oh yeah. So we did this in 2011, or let's see, what's 9 years ago?
Right. 2013, 2012.
So, well, 9 years ago, I guess. One of my collectors at the time, who was actually, so it must have been around 2012. He was a collector of mine, but also a very good friend of the gallery. Mm-hmm. And he had this idea to create a black book. Graffiti artists always carry black books, right?
Yeah.
And so he had this idea about like, what if I got all these graffiti artists from LA to do a page in this black book, right? and then you'd have this like, really thick book of all these graffiti artists, and it would kind of be like it would kind of like hold that place in time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he had this idea, and he knew some people at the Getty, and he called them, and it so happens that they loved the idea because it matched with some of their collections. I guess back in the day, right? Like during royalty times or whatever,
Yeah.
they would have this thing called Book of Friends, where royalty, when they showed up to a different, to someone's estate or castle or whatever, they had like an in-house artist that would receive the book and then do like a sketch or a drawing or something or painting in it. When that royal person left, he'd walk away with this image created by by his time at that royal place, right?
Oh, wow.
And it was like a very high uppity kind of thing that they were doing, right? It was like you had to be royalty to do this, right? It wasn't like the common person wasn't doing this.
Right.
And so they have books of those from back then, right? You're probably talking about like 13th century or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
13th, 14th century. And so they saw this book as like a modern day version of that. They decided to go ahead and have this book done. And so each one of us got a large sheet of, archival paper that the Getty gave us. And they asked me and a few other artists to also help curate it. So we got to invite like 5 to 10 artists ourselves. So at the end of the day, like 151 artists were involved. They put together and bound this book, and the collector, Ed Sweeney, and his wife gifted it, to the Getty. So it's this piece of history that we created with original pieces is sitting in the Getty Research Institute.
Wow.
And it'll be there forever. So that was cool.
That's amazing.
And they ended up doing some exhibitions, working with some of the artists from the book afterwards, like in satellite galleries and stuff like that, satellite museums, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward to now, they decided to actually publish a book so that anyone can order it and see the book for themselves. Now, it's smaller than the original, but it is all the artwork from that book. So it's pretty cool that they did that. And
you have that on the site, don't you? On Crewest?
Yeah, I sell it. Yeah, I'm one of the again, right? Like I guess I'm always
hustling,
thinking,
man. I love it.
I'm always hustling, right? So like so obviously when we did the book, it was a one-off. Like there was no talks about a merchandising or anything like that.
Right.
So when this came up and they published this book, I mean, I was like, well, are we going to get royalties? We're probably not, right?
That's an honest
probably
question.
Not. Yeah. and so I reached out and asked all the honest questions I could. And when I said, okay, well, all right, what if I become, will you allow me to sell the book on my site? And they're like, oh, we would love for you to sell it, So I became one of the official retailers of the book.
There you go.
And I think I'm down to about 3 books left. So I got to reorder.
Oh, wow.
So I've already put in like 4 shipments of books, and I need, again, it's selling like crazy. And so, but that's kind of like how my mind works, right? It's like, how am I going to, that's great that I'm involved in this, but how does this work into my wallet, right?
Hey, we're not doing this stuff for free.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anybody who's good at something, you got to get paid for it. Are you getting like a percentage? Is that the deal you worked out?
Yeah. So I'm basically wholesale. Like I'm buying them wholesale.
Oh, I see.
And just selling it to the shop.
So the profit you make.
Yeah.
I'm just making
cool. The retail profit on it, but it's better than getting no profit on it, right?
Oh my God. Yeah.
So,
check it out on Crewest. Is Crewest.com?
It's CrewestShop.com.
CrewestShop.com. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's, I'm sure that's going to be a collector's item.
Right
now and one day too,
Yeah, no, for sure. No,
well,
cool.
I've got like a list of things here. I know you did another book where you illustrated. Was it Roy Choi and Chef Roy Choi and the Street Food Remix? I know that won some awards. You want to talk about that real quick? And then I got a list of things that I'm just going to rapid fire go.
Okay.
Pick one and talk about it.
Okay. Yeah, the book was very, very cool, very interesting, because that was the first time that I illustrated a children's book. And obviously being an artist, and I think a lot of us have dreams like
publishing our own books or writing a children's book or illustrating this or illustrating that. And so the hardest part is always the publisher, right? Because you can do desktop publishing all day long. Like nothing will stop you from doing that. But are you really going to make sales? Like, do you really have the connections to be able to sell volume, right? The people who
talking to a guy who self-published like 3 books and I never made anything. So yeah,
it's really hard, right? It's hard. Like it's great because you get to put your idea out there and have a physical object. So that's great. Yeah. But then the financial part of it becomes like, well, that's a lot of work, And so the easiest way obviously is like you need to find a publisher, and it's very hard to find a publisher, especially when you're the one like trying to convince them, no, this will sell. Trust me, this will sell.
Can I just say real quick? Sorry, I want to hear this, but when I was doing that and I was reaching out to publishing houses to, pick up my book, they were like, we don't do that anymore. Now it's like, you've got to establish that you can sell books on your own. Like you've got an audience for your book. Like, there's got to be like 10,000 sales and then we'll look at you. So it's kind of like what everything else is going on, the record industry, as an artist, if you've got Instagram followers, it's the same shit. So sorry, keep going.
No, you're right. You're exactly right. And, so anyway, so what happened is I got a call from the book publisher. They're called Readers to Eaters. Yeah. And all their books are about telling stories through food and children's books, right? Children's books. And so when they reached out to me, they said, we have this idea for this book that we're writing about Chef Roy Choi, who happens to be someone I know and I'm a friend of and a big fan of. And trucks, right? Yeah. We even had Kogi at some of our exhibitions at Crewest Gallery, before he really blew up, right?
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, awesome! It's about him, his life. He's a great role model. He's a great person to have a book written about, a children's book. And they said, we want you to illustrate it because we want the voice to be an authentic LA artist. Mm-hmm. So I was on board. I was like, let's do it. They could have told me the book was about, they could have told me it was about hamburgers and the first guy that invented ketchup, and I would have done it. Right? Right. Because I'm like, the publisher reaching out to me, they're going to pay me to draw. Like, that's all you got to say, right?
Hell yeah.
Because I always figured, like, especially in publishing or doing a book, if you can get your foot in, then that's what you need. You need to do whatever you can just to get your foot in, I guess I'm trying to say. Yes. And so I was like, let's do it, because I'm not part of that world, that publishing world or the book world. I don't have anything to show for that, so it can't hurt. I did the book. I illustrated it. It took me about 6 months to illustrate it. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of work. I did not realize how much work it was going to be. And now, mind you, I just illustrated. I didn't write it. So it's a lot of work just to illustrate a book. Obviously, I was learning from scratch. And so I was like trial and error. Like in my mind, I had a way that I was going to do it all. Didn't work out that way at all. I had to completely keep changing and shifting my ideas. But some of the things that did stay true was I always wanted to have a graffiti piece in a children's book, because I figured, like, I've never seen graffiti, well, legitimate graffiti in a children's book, right? Like some actual lettering and stuff like that. And so if I could just accomplish that, I'll be so happy. And there's a page in the book where I have a graffiti piece that says Watts in there. And so that was a really proud moment. Then the other thing was I wanted to also be able to paint like aerosol as part of the illustration work. Mm-hmm. And so what I ended up doing is I painted most of the backdrops on large canvases, and they were like the cityscapes or like different things like that. And then I painted them with spray paint and then photographed them, scanned them. And then all the other work was done with pencil and scanned and then colorized with Photoshop. And then we, overlaid everything. So it actually worked out because the spray can has a very soft kind of feel to it. Mm-hmm. And then the drawings are a little bit harder edged. So it created almost like a cell vinyl effect.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. Anyways, so long story short, did the book, went on a book tour, opened up at the LA Public Library. And I couldn't believe how, like, immediately the librarians were on board, the teachers were on board. I went to my first book conference in Texas, and we were up immediately for an award in Texas, and walking into like 30,000 people at this book conference, and like everyone knows who you are.
Oh,
they're
yeah.
like, oh, you're Man One with the Chef Roy Choi book and blah blah. And I'm like, how do you know? Like, but it's like if you get into the librarian world, oh my God.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Those people talk and spread news and information so quickly.
Well, I'm talking about being exposed to a different audience too.
Completely different audience. I never been to a book conference, let alone like any of these. And then be able to speak at them. And because that's the first thing they ask once you start winning awards, is they want you to speak at the next conference and all that. So I started doing these live demo / talks.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a canvas on stage. I have a microphone, headset. I'm showing slides of my work on the wall or on the whatever, and I'm painting live.
Oh, that's cool.
All together. And people are like tripping out because a lot of these talks are, honestly, I think a lot of them are kind of boring. Like
they're dry. Yeah.
They're dry. You're just on stage and just some guy talking, and maybe sometimes there's images, but that's usually the same format. But I'm like, no, man, let's paint something. Let's talk. Let's show. And so it became a hit, and I started touring all over the country, getting, I'd go to Seattle for a week and talk to schools and libraries and colleges. And then I'd be in New Orleans for another conference. And it was amazing. It's still selling. The book is still selling. Matter of fact, the book is coming out later this year in Spanish.
Oh, so wow.
They translated it, and it's coming out in Spanish. And
there's probably a big market for that too.
So so another big market. So there's going to be like another push. And then also they did an audio book, and they asked me to be the narrator.
Really?
And now I'm an award-winning narrator.
Oh my God, that's awesome, man. So I have Audible. I always listen to audiobooks when I'm working because I can't read and paint at the same time, So
yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's amazing.
Exactly. So it's crazy. Sometimes these doors open up and you kind of have to just walk through them and see what happens, And obviously now, like with the success of the book, everyone wants me to write and illustrate my own book now. And I'm telling you, I want to do it so bad, and I'm so scared to do it too. I know like how much time it's going to take to do that, and I want to do it justice. And it's always scary, right? Like when your first thing is a success, like your next thing is going to be like maybe not as successful. But so I don't know.
It's a lot to live up to, but it sounds like you'll probably get to it when the time's right.
That's the thing, and that's what I've been telling my publisher. And he kept hitting me up during the pandemic, right? He's like, "This is a great time. Like, like do something right now. You have a lot of time." And behind closed doors, I'm like, there's a lot going on right now, dude. That I can't share, but there's a lot of issues going on, and I don't have the right headspace to do a book right now.
Yeah,
it would have been a great time, I guess.
It would have been.
But anyways, that's what we agree. The right time will happen, because I know I got to dedicate X amount of months just to drawing, X amount of months just to writing. So the right time will happen, and the book will come out, and then maybe it'll make it easier for a series of books to come out after that. But yeah, it's just exciting to be able to be in like you said, in an entire new space that I had I couldn't compare it to anything, because
and people are hardcore in that space. Like if you love books.
Oh yeah, hardcore, and they have a passion for books the way I have a passion for art.
Yes,
and so it's really cool to be even just a little part of that now.
It's so cool, and to bridge the gap, I think it opens a lot of doors. I'm always telling people, obviously you can't say yes to everything, but something that kind of could work. It's a little scary, but you got to just jump into it sometimes, because it opens up a bunch of doors. It sounds like you. With the Warp Tour, you got to travel. With this, you got a little bit of a rock star, traveling the country too. Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, you know what? One of the interesting points that I didn't realize until I got into the whole children's book thing is that less than 6% of all the books that are created every year are done by people of color.
Oh, really?
Either illustrated or written.
Oh, wow.
So 94%, basically has nothing to do with people of color. So there's a huge market, because one of the things I learned, It's very shocking, but it also shows like there's opportunity. And
Yes.
I remember going to like different cities and talking to kids, and kids wanted to come up to me and meet me and stuff. And they're like, this little kid from El Salvador came up to me one time and was like, I want to be an artist when I grow up, like just from hearing me talk. And then people ask me, is it in Spanish? I want it in Spanish, and it's about, representation matters, So it's like when they see someone that looks like them doing what I'm doing, then all of a sudden it becomes attainable to them. And
Yes.
And if you're doing children's books, I mean, isn't that the point of children's books, that to open up kids' imaginations and make them dream and
Definitely
and think that they can do, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, so that's why I'm very interested in like continuing this work with some new books and stuff, because like it's needed. It's just the bottom line is that it's needed.
It's needed. And that's something else that I love about what you do, because you seem to be, you're all about the charitable causes. You're all about working with people. Like I want to get to the, working with children in Panama thing. I love, even as like a street artist or a graffiti artist, it's one of those things where you're showing what's possible for people on the street. Maybe somebody who's coming from like the street from a low income area, I can get out of the street. It's like what happened with sports for a long time. You need the sport to get out or to make something of yourself. That's what art's all about, man. I love that you're doing that. Do you mind taking a quick pee break?
Oh, no, it's fine. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, because I want to, this is long. I want to make sure that this is saved. And then what I'll do is I'll just send you another link and we'll start up, because I want to make sure we don't lose all this.
For sure.
Okay, cool. Give me 5 minutes and I'll send you another link.
Let's do it. Thanks.
Awesome, man. All right. Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Recording in progress.
Oh. Hey.
Sorry
about that. It was a little heavy. It took a little while for it to convert. I was like, it'll be 5 minutes. No problem.
No worries. Yeah, I had to move because my iPad is dying, so I need to move closer to an outlet.
Yeah, I noticed. I think the
my AirPods went off on.
Yeah. But at least we still got sound. I was thinking about doing old school sound too, because these things are bugging me anyway. Well, welcome back to Man One Part 2. I love saying that. Hey, so what's the impetus for Man One?
Yeah, actually, when I was telling you the story about that kid who gave me the marker when I was, when I started writing on the buses, like I told you, he said, don't write your real name. And I was listening on my Sony Walkman headphones back then to a group called Mantronics, which is a New York old school, hip hop group. And so that's the first thing I ever wrote was Mantronics. And I don't know, it just stuck with me. So every day on the bus, I would write Mantronics and all that. But when I started doing it on the street, that's when things changed, because by the time I got to the X and Mantronics, I'd probably get arrested.
Yeah, right.
So I figured I had to cut it down somehow. So I cut it down to the first three letters, which was Man, M-A-N. And the letter 1 or the number 1 in graffiti culture, at least in L.A. at the time, it had to do with kind of like your copyright, your trademark, right? Mm-hmm. So there's no Man 2 or Man 10, like you're Man 1, the originator of that name in that city,
Nice.
And so so my street name is really Man, but if you notice, a lot of artists, like they'll have the 1 after it.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes they don't use it. And, going back to my college professor, the one who finally told me I should do this, one of the things he had for me, one of the questions he had for me when I graduated, he said, how are you going to sign your paintings?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you going to use your real name or what? And I said, no, I don't want to use my real name, because then I'll kind of be pigeonholed as like a Latino artist. And like, that's all I'm going to be.
Right.
I like the anonymous, like Man One kind of sound. Right. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'll probably write Man or Man One, or he goes, no. There's not 1 or 2 ways of, there's just one way of writing it, because that's going to be your brand,
Mm-hmm.
So he said, just pick one and stick to
so
that.
They did teach you one bit of business then.
Yeah, he didn't use the word branding, but that's what he meant, right? But yeah, he did teach me something about business, and he said, just pick one name and just stick to it. And so I figured Man would be way too generic, and Man One kind of reminded me of like Man Ray, mm-hmm. or something like that. And I was like, that sounds kind of artsy, but yet street, and it's still my name. So I just kept Man One. And so ever since then, I just sign everything Man One.
It's cool. I also like, it's like OG too. It's like the first person to ever do this. I am Man One. I like that.
The funniest thing is so many of my friends who are graffiti artists, it took them years to figure out what name to write, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they changed it numerous times because everybody, there's no original name. Everyone has been named something in graffiti at some point. But, there's always like common names, right? Like there's like Crash, like everyone wants to be Crash, or everyone wants to be like, Wizard or whatever. There's always like some name that everybody wants to do. If you want to be original in that name, you have to pick something more original. And man is like such a common word. Like I can't believe that no one that was ever like using it. Like, I'm sure there were other graffiti artists that used the word man, but luckily they never gained enough success where it mattered. So I'm like, so it's a funny thing. Like when people meet me, they're like, "Hey, what's up, man?" And then they laugh. They go like, "Oh,
so, what's up, Man One?"
Yeah.
It's funny. My wife is my wife's from Argentina, and she was like, "Oh, it's probably Manuel. It's probably short for Manuel."
Like, everyone says that. They're always like,
it's not.
It's not even close.
I like that. Yeah, that's cool. Well, I did discover your birth name, but we're gonna keep the branding Man One.
Okay.
I like it. Because I also brand. I'm PMS. Mine sounds embarrassing, but it's my initials. And I was originally signing my work Preston Marshall Smith. I was like, man, this takes forever, just like what you're talking about. And I just started signing my initials, PMS. And I remember like embracing it, kind of being like, you know what?
Yeah.
I used to get made fun of this for this in sex ed class. Like, oh, Preston's initials are PMS. And I'm like, I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to make it my own. And so that's what I did. Yeah. PMS artwork. There you go.
Good.
Boom.
Yeah.
And it's branding. I mean, people don't want to talk. That's one thing that I get a lot of pushback from artists too. And I think it's just because they don't want to do the work, but it's like, no, I don't need to brand myself. I don't need to be doing this. I don't need to, but you know what? You kind of do in this day and age. You got to be able to brand yourself. You got to be a recognizable style. You got to be a recognizable voice. You got to be a recognizable brand. So I dig that about what you're doing too. Okay. So I told you I was going to do some rapid fire. I'm going to give you a couple topics. Well, actually a bunch of topics, and you just tell me which one you want to talk about. Because you got so much stuff. We could do a part 2, 3, 4, 5. So, okay, we got the Nat King Cole Project, Regenerations. I'm a PC, PPG Paint, Golden State Cerveza. We already talked about Vans Warped Tour. Red Bull, London. Workshops in Northern Ireland, Japan, Germany, Mexico. The mural map we talked about a little bit. Faces L.A. we talked about a little bit, but you can talk about it more if you want. Working with children in Panama, charitable causes like the I Heart Foundation, I'm an Angel, Heal the Bay, Center for Biological Diversity. Favorite mural, favorite screen appearance in movies like John Tucker Must Die, all this. I'm trying to get you out there as much as possible. So even if we don't talk about them, people are going to be like, whoa, what's this? I gotta Google this. Working with the Institute on Aging, your favorite press profile. I think that's my list. So,
oh man,
anything that strike you?
Yeah, those are just all these memories going in my head as you just stuff. Let's start with the Panama, just because that's a very interesting story, even to me, because I actually went to Panama as basically an art ambassador, and what happened is a friend of mine recommended me because he had done something like this similar in Mexico. He's an author and he went over there, but it's put together by the U.S. government. And so the U.S. State Department basically gave me a grant to go to Panama and do graffiti. And
it's wild.
It's crazy because it's like, I thought it was a joke when I first got the call, and they were like, no, this is the government. This is government officials talking to me. Okay. And they're saying,
wait, so you didn't apply for this?
No, I didn't apply. They just called me. They said so-and-so recommended you to us. And we want to get a graffiti artist to travel down to Panama and hold workshops to speak about graffiti. We want to have an artist that can also do TV appearances on their local channels and be able to call to do talks and lectures at universities. And then also there's a big artist conference that we want this artist to attend.
Yeah.
You know? Are you willing to do that? It's going to be like a week down there. And you'll be hosted by the US ambassador in Panama.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. But like I was waiting for so, you know, where's the
catch?
Where's the catch? You know?
Yeah.
And so, so I signed up and I said, okay, I'll do it. And the whole angle was using graffiti art as a vehicle for social justice and being able to talk to, you know, kids, but also just, you know, other people. And like I said, even at universities, and show the impact of graffiti art and how it can impact communities and stuff like that, like all over the world in a positive way. So it was the first time that I'd seen graffiti being used by the government as a positive way to like promote like our culture.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, cool. And I had done something kind of similar many years before, but it was the German government that invited me to go to Germany and teach graffiti workshops. But at the time, back then, I was still being chased by cops in LA. So that was like a really weird thing. It's like, wait a second. Okay. But anyway, so I go to Panama and it was wild because first of all, I get to the airport and I don't know what to expect. And, you know, there's the line for the re-entry, right? And they have the customs and all that.
Yeah.
And so I'm waiting at the end of the line of the customs. And this woman walks over and she's like, hey, you know, you Man One? Yeah. Okay, come with me. Forget this line. Come with me. So
Nice.
you go through the special line, right? With like
VIP treatment.
Yeah. And she's like, just give me your ID, my passport, shows it to them, whatever. They're like, they didn't even check my bags. I'm like, man,
Really?
I could have brought like all my pain
God.
and everything. And I had no idea. But anyways, so now I'm getting like,
Wait, sorry, what year was this?
This was in 2000 and, ooh, that's going to be a good question. I got to look it up. I want to say 2008 or something like that.
Okay.
It's on my resume there somewhere.
Yeah,
probably.
but this is like post TSA, like heavy duty checking stuff.
Oh yeah.
Just come on through. All right.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm like, all right, cool. So I go out there and I meet my driver. And she was like the cultural attaché or whatever, right? And then my driver, and then a photographer. And I'm like, okay. And so that was our crew, basically the whole 5-6 days I was there. And what would happen is they'd wake me up. They come to the airport. They come to the hotel like 6 a.m. Pick me up. We'd go have a quick breakfast or something, and then we'd be gone all day until like 10 o'clock at night. And it was literally like we'd go to a TV show like at 10 a.m. and I'd be a guest on a TV show. And then at noon, I would be at a university giving like a 1-hour talk. And then like at 3 p.m., I would have a workshop with kids. Wow. And then like at 6 p.m., there'd be a dinner and I would be talking to some other community members or something. And it was always different, but it was kind of like that every day. And it was like a lot of work, but we started off in Panama City and then we went all over Panama. So like sometimes I'd fly, we'd get at 6 a.m., we'd be on a plane, you know, to one of the islands and we do something there. And so it was really awesome because I was being treated like a freaking, you know, dignitary. Yeah. And I have my own personal photographer. I couldn't believe that. Like everywhere we go, he's taking photos of me and what we're doing and everything. And obviously I got to meet the ambassador and we did an event with her at the time. And then I got to meet like all the kids and all the, a lot of artists from Panama and get to learn their culture, which was awesome because, you know, I'd never been down there before. Yeah. And I just fell in love with the culture and like the different parts of Panama. I didn't know like how different certain parts of the country were. And it was just beautiful country. And there was like jungle and there was oceans and there was like, you know, downtown areas. And it was great, but it was like a whirlwind. It happened so quickly and everything just like every day I was doing something else. It was all positive, all great. And then I was on a plane and I was like, you know, I didn't even see the the Panama Canal. like that's the one thing I knew about Panama was the canal.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah. Well, and it's like a bunch of expats go there. Like people like retire there now.
But and I didn't even get to see that. Wow. So it was so funny because afterwards, after when I got back, I had my contact here in the States, and I was talking to her, and I was like, "Oh, that was really awesome, thank you," and blah blah. And I said, "I just wish I would have had more time, because like." She goes, "Oh, you wanted to spend more time down there?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like she goes, "Oh, well, next time if you do it again, just you can add 2 or 3 days to it, and we'll just like let you hang out and do whatever you want to do, on your own time." And I'm like, "All right."
I wish I would have known. Next time I get to work for the U.S. government and go down to Panama. I mean, I'm assuming they gave you like a per diem, some money to spend, or like they fed you at least, whatever.
Yeah. So it wasn't a lot of money. It wasn't a lot of money, and definitely not the kind of money that I was making over here at the time on projects, but it was decent. Yeah. But yeah, they paid for everything, 100%. All my meals, all my travel, everything was taken care of. Nice. And I had a per diem. So yeah, it was fine. It was like,
that's so cool. Living the dream, baby.
Yeah, it was different.
Did they tell you like what was the? I don't know, like why. I'm just trying to figure out like why they started this program.
I think it's like, and this actually touches to something else that I did in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I was interested in that. I've got a bunch of Irish ancestry.
Yeah, so it's kind of the same thing. It's like, how do we? I'm talking about like governments, right? Like when the way they think, and they need to. Work with other countries and stuff like that, and one of the first things they think is like, how can we create a bond with this other country, and how do we share experiences so that we can work on bigger issues, right? And one of the first things is art, and when you're able to bridge the gap with artists, then you're able to like affect communities, and then you're able to affect kids. And so I think that's kind of the whole idea, was that. And then at the time was what kind of art, right? You could bring a musician, you can bring a dancer, or whatever. But at the time they were like, we think bringing a graffiti artist will resonate with a lot of the kids that were trying to convey this message, right? And so that was the thinking was.
That's really cool. And it's like art is the universal language.
Yeah, yeah, and so and specifically graffiti art. On some level, on many levels, it's a youth oriented art movement,
right?
And I'm a little past my youth now, but I feel young, and I'm still doing it.
You look young, man. It's the art. It keeps us young,
right? And so but really, kids, they gravitate towards it. They understand it. Like when you go out and do graffiti, like when I was doing it in Germany. They may not speak English, or I may not speak German, but we totally understand the language. Yeah. And then the same thing when I went to Northern Ireland, there was a theater company, Playhouse, that does these exchanges where they bring artists over, and I was part of that. And so there was like 3-4 of us, I guess, came over from the States, different artists from different cities, and we hung out for 3 weeks, and we did mural programs with the kids out there, and that was also with the social justice angle, and that was bringing together kids who were Catholic and who were Protestant, and bringing them together and being able to create a project kind of in unity with each other and get above and beyond all their issues that they deal with over there. Which were so different, and it was amazing being there too, because like I didn't understand, and living in, especially like in L.A., right? Like everything is so easily noticeable by color, right?
Right.
Like there's race plays a big issue in everything. Where the freeways are, there's communities of color because the freeways end there.
And which communities of color too?
Right, exactly. And there's so much in my mind that I've been kind of trained and to look at things through race and color, and then you go to somewhere like Northern Ireland, where to me everyone looks exactly the same.
Yeah,
like but they have beef with each other, and I'm like,
we find a different way to hate each other for different reasons.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, and that's kind of like, it's kind of, there's two parts to that. There's, no matter where we are in the world, we always find, and I mean humans, we always find a way to hate another group of people for some reason.
For some difference. Yeah.
For some difference, whatever it is. And then the other part, the positive side, is no matter where we are in the world, there's always ways to bring people together. And and art is one of those catalysts, you know?
For sure.
And so so that's what we were able to do in Northern Ireland. And it was a very successful program. Matter of fact, I went back 2 times after that.
Oh, wow.
So, and I was in Londonderry, Derry, and which is like, you know, I didn't even know the history there really until I got there. I knew so little of that history and the troubles that happened there and all that. But then you get there and you're like immersed in it, and you see that like some of these people are holding on to issues that are centuries old.
Oh, yeah. And it just keeps getting passed down from family to family, generation to generation.
It's crazy, but it's like that's the world.
It's pretty brutal, yeah.
And so so that place has a special part in my heart, because like I have so many friends now there, and
Ireland's amazing.
Yeah, and so anyways, so all those kind of, you know, travels that I've done around the world have those things in common, and it's amazing. Like I would have never thought as a kid that someone would tell me, even though I knew I was going to be a graffiti artist when I grew up and make a living, if you would have told me you're going to go to different countries and teach and do workshops, and that part I was like, wow, that's
the dream, is not only making a living off your art, but having it affect people, having it take you to different communities around the world that you would have never had access to otherwise. That's amazing. Like that's honestly, it's living the dream. It is.
Yeah. I went to another, like the first time I went to Japan was to teach graffiti, a graffiti workshop at a design school in Osaka.
Yeah.
And I went and I taught 150 students graffiti for a week, and it was really, really different. And it was one of my best experiences, because it felt like being on a different planet. Just the way Japan was. I mean, that was my first time in Japan. So, and I love Japanese culture. Like
I did too.
I'm into robots and collectible toys and stuff like that. But actually being there and immersed in the culture, it was so amazing. And then to see the way they look at graffiti, for example, like to them, graffiti is such an American thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like there was an area in Osaka, they called it the American Village, where all the American shops were at, right? Like Levi's or whatever, right? And that's the only place in Osaka at the time where you could do graffiti and no one would care.
Oh, really?
Because it's American. It belongs there.
Right.
Like,
that's funny.
You couldn't do graffiti anywhere else, but there it was like, yeah, it's American, you know.
But the Japanese culture has a long history of adopting certain parts of American culture, like the punk movement. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm sure graffiti is a big one now. Certain aspects of music. I went to Japan in 2002. I loved it. I just love, man. But it's so different. The culture is so different. It's a very safe place. Were you struck by that?
Super safe.
I think there's like 6 murders a year in Japan, and there's like 600 in New York alone. I mean, you see these women riding the subway late at night, scantily clad in like 6-inch high heels. Nobody bothers them. It's just a safe community. I mean, it has its problems too, but safety is not one of them. But I love Japan.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful out there. And so, you know, like, well, one of the things that was interesting to me was I was trying to teach letter forms to these students, right? And they all wanted to do English names, English fonts, right? And I was like, no, do it in Japanese, you know, script, do it in your
the characters, yeah.
And they would not do it. And
really,
it was like sacrilegious. It was like, it took me some time to really like take it in, because, you know, imagine how many hours a day they had to practice to be able to do those characters.
Oh yeah, it's an art form.
It's an art form. And now I'm telling them, just jack it all up and add arrows and stretch it out and do this and do that. And they're like, nope, we're not going to do that. And it was funny because one of the teams, we had like I broke everyone down into like 4 or 5 groups. 4 or 5 members per team.
Mm-hmm.
So we get a bunch of teams to do these canvases. One group decided to do that and take it on. And everyone was like hating on them. All their peers were like hating on them because they were like, you're doing this, like sacrilegious defacement of our culture, And at the end of the day, like that was my favorite group because they really
I bet. Well, yeah, because they're taking a risk too.
They're taking a risk, and because it's really hard. Like you mentioned, one of the reasons I think Japan is so safe and so because everything is so structured and it's positively structured.
Yes.
And so when you tell anyone to go against that, it's not in their nature, and it's very difficult to get them to do something negative or crazy or wild.
Oh yeah,
because it's just not in their nature. So yeah, there was a big risk for them doing that. Obviously now, fast forward so many years now, like all kinds of people are doing graffiti in Japan, and there's
that's
so
what I
many
was going to
artists
ask.
out there, and it's a way different scene now.
Are they doing the graffiti with the characters though?
Yeah.
Yep.
Now they're doing everything,
Wow.
So
well, then there is some. To your point, there's some repression in Japan because of that. There's a very high suicide rate in Japan because of some of that stuff. I mean, it's amazing. I love everything about Japanese culture. I love the amount of time and effort they put into everything. Everything's very detail oriented and beautiful. There's a lot we can learn from that. But it's cool to hear that they're adopting the graffiti culture.
I love it.
That's awesome. Well, so let's talk I wanted to talk to you about the Institute on Aging just because I thought that was really cool. Ageism is a big thing in our culture. And I just thought that was awesome that you were teaching some of the elderly community about graffiti art. You want to talk about that a tiny bit?
Yeah. So that was awesome because so my partner, Scott Sourdough, me and him also do, by the way, the Not Real Art podcast, which...
okay. I was going to talk about that too. Yep.
We'll need to have you on there as our guest.
That'd be great. That'd be awesome.
So it was, through some of his contacts, this opportunity came up for us to go to San Francisco and create like a 3-day, I think it was like a 3-day workshop with the Institute on Aging, which is basically, it's a really great facility there where, they have senior citizens all living in this beautiful buildings, and they do community projects, and they bring people in, and they just keep their residents very engaged, and they provide all the services like medical and everything comes to them. So they don't have to worry about, trying to get across town to see a doctor or something like that. So it's a really cool institute and amazing people that work there. And so we went over there and we figured out, let's just go for it. Let's just teach these people all about hip hop, right? Because they have no idea what hip hop is. They have no idea what graffiti is or whatever, right? We're assuming. Yeah. And we said, let's give them like a 3-day crash course. And so day one, we had this MC who came in, a local guy who was like a spoken word artist. Mm-hmm. He got them into it, and we had a DJ doing some music and scratching, and got the folks into, clapping and dancing in their seats and everything. And then I did like a visual presentation to them about graffiti and about my art and what I do, but then also put it into context with around the world, where you can see graffiti and how it's done and the culture. And these people loved it. I mean, they were like so engaged, and we thought, like maybe a few of the residents will come and hang out and check it out. But there was like probably 50, 60 people in the auditorium.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't really an auditorium. It was like the rec center kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there was like 50 or 60 people like engaged, and they're like just asking questions and dancing and loving it. And so we passed out like, so then I was showing them how to do lettering. Mm-hmm. And so what we did like a coloring book style where we did black and white sheets of paper. We passed them out, gave them all markers and crayons and whatever. And they were coloring them in, and then from that point, then they started doing their own lettering and all this. And the final goal was to be able to paint a wall that they had right outside their rec center. It was a nice little wall. And I told them, you're going to see this every single day. So it's got to come from you. Like, it's not my idea. I'm just going to help you guys create this piece of art.
Yeah. You got to be proud of it.
So we had some breakout sessions and really awesome conversations, because there was like, one man was talking about growing up on a farm in the Midwest, and he loves this color green because it reminds him of like the John Deere,
the tractors. Yeah.
And then someone else was talking about like how they were marching during the civil rights era, and it was like amazing conversations. Another guy was in the Navy and in World War II, and so this is who I'm talking to. This diverse group of elderly people who, and probably a lot of cases have been written off sometimes.
Yeah.
Just because their families are no longer around or whatever. And you realize like, wow, these are some amazing people that we need to capture these stories and just, I'm just blessed to be able to sit here with people and gain all this information and all these stories. And so they ended up coming up with the concept of One Love. And
nice.
We did a mural that said One Love, right? But the funny thing is that I said, I'm going to sketch it out, and then you guys are going to paint it in. And then at the end, I'll come in and just kind of clean it up.
Yeah.
So usually this is the first time I worked with senior citizens on a mural, like just senior citizens, right? Usually it's younger kids, right? Usually, or it's a mix. And generally the kids, like, you have to really prompt them and force them, and they're like, they're kind of nervous and they're looking at their peers. These people, they're like,
you'd almost think it'd be the opposite though, because when you're a kid, you're like, I'll just jump up and do anything.
No, it was like, working with these senior citizens, it was like, give me the can, let me do this. like I've never done this, but I have no time to wait for you. Like,
right.
Like time is of the essence. Give me the can and let me do this, And so we had, like, I'm trying to sketch out this letter, and we created stencils and all this kind of stuff, and they're just going at it and painting. And I just said, you know what? Just do the whole wall. I'm not even going to get involved yet, And so they just went to town for a few hours and just painted the entire wall, different colors and shapes and everything. And then at the very end, I came in and just kind of did a little outline. And I mean, it was like, I still have probably, I think last year, I still had someone from there send me a letter. God, it's just amazing, like the connections you make, because some of these people, it's like, the youngest participant was like 67. And the oldest was like 98.
Oh, wow.
So some of these people, I'm sure, are no longer around,
Sure. Yeah.
And this may have been their last like little thing that they created, and left behind.
And they probably don't get many opportunities to have like a new experience like that either.
No. And one other thing we did is we took them on a tour. We took them on a street art tour to there's a famous like little alleyway down there in San Francisco.
I saw that part of the video. Yeah.
So we took them down there, and they were just like, wow, like so cool. So, I mean, that was amazing. And that was a very unique opportunity that we got to do. And, I mean, hopefully we'll do more of those, you never know. That's
amazing. Yeah. I saw in the video one of the guys, I think it's pretty close to where they live, right? That alleyway. Yeah. Oh, and he'd never been down it. Never been exposed to it. That's amazing. Yeah. That's really inspiring. Honestly, It makes me want to do more like public stuff. Get out of my studio, get on the streets a bit. Yeah. That's awesome. So, okay, I want to ask you do you have a favorite mural that you've created? I know that's a hard question.
That's a really hard question. My answer was always like, because I've been asked that before, and usually my answer is like, well, I haven't created it yet.
There you go. No, that's a great answer.
Like I'm still working towards that. But having said that, there are a few murals that are very special for different reasons. We mentioned the one of my parents. They live like 15 minutes away from me here now, which is great. So I see them very often.
Nice.
But just to be able to have that mural of them, I think was very special, and not a lot of artists get to do something like that.
Yeah.
So in the public, right? So that one's really special. And then another one wasn't a great piece of art or anything, but I got to paint on the Berlin Wall, you know?
Oh, wow.
And so the graffiti piece we did on there, it was a graffiti piece. It was nothing, I wouldn't say it was anything very special, but the act of doing that, you know, and the being able to actually say, like, I painted on the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
Like, that's, to me,
Not
that's
many
just
people
like,
can say that.
no. And obviously the wall had already come down, and there was an area in Berlin where
I know I was doing the math. I was like, wasn't this like 88? You were over there.
Yeah. This was in 90. I went in like 94, 93.
Oh, okay. That's pretty close.
So so the wall had just come down, like, what? Yeah, 88 or something, right?
Yeah, something like that.
And so being able to paint on that wall, I think it's just like an epic thing, you know. Like, I'm not very proud of that piece we did there. Like, I probably don't even know what happens to that piece, but just the fact that we were able to do it was sometimes, you know, the experience. And that's another thing with graffiti.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times the experience of doing something together with other artists is greater than the actual physical piece, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And like the physical piece isn't the end all be all, you know, for every project. Because, you know, I've made so many friends around the world doing graffiti, and I may not even remember what the hell I painted with some of these people.
Yeah.
But I remember that we hung out, and I remember that, you know, the things we did. And I think that's kind of like you know, it might sound kind of cheesy or corny, but, you know, it's kind of like what the purpose of life is, right? Is like to be able to create great experiences, meet people, share culture, you know, all those kind of things, you know?
Well, what I like about it too is it kind of takes the emphasis off of you too. It's one of those things where, because like as artists, we're always trying to get ourselves out there, get our name out there, get our art out there, but kind of to step back and go, you know what, this is bigger than me. This is like an experience that I'm doing. I think that's powerful. I felt that way about so many things. Like the Obama thing I did was, I'm not super proud. I mean, I am proud of the pieces that I created, but I had to create so many so quickly. But it was being a part of that event, going to the inaugural ball and like meeting these celebrities and stuff. That is forever in my mind. I don't even remember creating the piece. I don't remember it. You know what I mean? So I completely understand. It's about the experiences that creating art lets you have, which is really cool. I have a few questions that I always ask everybody at the end. There's so many other things we can talk about. I might have to have you on some other time at part 2. But okay, cool. But I always ask people and artists, like, because I think of us as superheroes a little bit. That's why I ask about the origin story. Do you have some sort of, I call them superpowers, something that gets you creating? If you're having one of those moments where you're not feeling it, is there something that you can do that'll get you into that creative mindset?
Yeah, you know, and you probably know this very well, but being a professional artist, sometimes you just don't have time to get inspired.
Yeah, 90% of the time.
it's like there's a deadline, and you just need to produce, and no one's gonna care if you're inspired or not. They just need the work done, and you got to do it. And so I think to get into that mode, a lot of times, like you said, if I'm not feeling necessarily creative at that moment or whatever, I think music is what does it for me. Yes. Most of the time, I'll just, you know, and I'm kind of eclectic with what I listen to, even though my foundation is hip hop, and obviously I still love hip hop, and mostly when I say hip hop, I'm talking about the old school stuff. The new stuff, I don't know if
I was like a 10-year-old white. I was like a 10-year-old white kid in Wyoming listening to NWA, Public Enemy, and all this stuff. So I completely feel you on that. Yep. Oh man, yeah. So I think music is what does it for me. When I need that shot. You know, I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to perform on stage. You know, not just at the Warped Tour, but, you know, I was on tour with MTV. Yeah. I've been on stage with like you know, P-Funk and George Clinton and other acts. And so when you're on stage and the music is just going, dude, it's like the best feeling. Like, it doesn't really matter what you're painting. Like, it's just, you're just part of like the whole event. And so channeling that is like the easiest way to get creative. So like I'll pretend I'm on stage, right? I'll blare the music in here in the studio and just kind of get in that mindset, like, you know, just groove with whatever's going on. That's the first time I've had somebody, I think, give me that answer, and I relate to it so well. I don't know if you've had this experience too with music, but I can put on a certain song and it immediately transports me back into an era or a period of my life where I felt something. And it's just like, it's like a quick little trick to get right into the creative mindset. I don't know. So I think that's a great answer.
No, totally. And even the mood, right? Like, like you can pick a certain type. Like if I'm trying to go for like this type of dark mood in my painting, then I know which kind of like soundtrack to put on.
For sure, man. I've had podcast episodes devoted to that, like where I'm just ranting about that. And for me, it's like I went through some dark periods in my life, and I don't need to be dark anymore. I can just use that to get back into that and just revisit it for like an hour or two or three or four, and then step back out of it.
And then step back.
And music is the gateway.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's awesome.
That's cool, man. Okay. And then do you have any like failures that were important to you? Like I always say biggest failures, but some people don't like the word failure. I don't really like it that much either, but something that happened that you didn't succeed at that you learned from.
I think I probably can't remember every single failure because I've had so many. But I never looked at failures as failures. Like I've always looked at them as like opportunities to learn from them. You know, one of the things that I don't know, I've just been blessed and you know, some people say it's just being smart, but I've avoided a lot of negative situations just by doing something when the time presented itself. So, you know, like I believe in the, like, if the door opens, just walk in, you know, that's happened to me so many times, you know, that I don't know how I've been lucky enough that those doors that opened led me to good places. But I guess I just have a lot of faith and trust in, like, kind of like, if I'm doing good things, the universe is going to reciprocate. And, like, you know, I just got to be aware, you know, because there's a lot of people who say no to things that
people can't see me nodding on the podcast, but I'm like, yes. Yep. Yeah.
Because sometimes like I've seen artists who had tremendous opportunities thrown their way and they blow it. Like they self-sabotage it, or they just decide that that's not for them or whatever. And then down the road, they regret it for the rest of their lives, because then they realize, like, wow, I should have done that. And for me, I've had the exact opposite experience. It's like I every time I see something open up for me, I take it and I'm like so grateful for it. And then that leads to something better and bigger. And then it kind of goes that way. So when I do fail, it's almost like, it just feels like part of that journey. It doesn't feel like, oh, that's it, it's over, I'm done. No, it just feels like, oh, okay, that's, you know. Another thing that I didn't mention on this whole podcast is that I played soccer my whole life. And I played all the way to semi-pro.
I think you mean football.
So, yeah, football. Is the way
yeah.
And so,
really? Semi-pro?
Yeah, at LMU,
oh, wow.
I played Division I soccer at LMU.
Oh, wow.
The 4 years I was there. And then after that, I ended up playing semi-pro, because the MLS, the Pro Soccer League in the States, didn't start till 95.
Yeah.
So
it's garbage until recently.
So I missed like any opportunity. Like now, if I would have been playing now, I would have definitely tried out for a pro team. But my point is, having played soccer is you fail like all the time. Right?
Oh yeah.
And I was a goalkeeper. So like, of course I got scored on. I got scored on a lot. Yeah. Right. And that's the only way you learn and get better is by getting scored on. But just because you get scored on doesn't make you a failure. Right.
Well, if you looked at it that way, you'd stop playing. Like if somebody scores on you, you'd be like, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know?
Like one professional player said one time that you don't even start being a goalkeeper until you get 100 goals scored on you, you know?
Yes. And so that's kind of like the art thing we were talking about earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. So given that, I think that parallel, I've taken that to heart, like in my career. It's like playing sports to me. You're going to have, you know, people are going to score on you, and you got to get up, dust yourself off, and get ready for the next play. And that's how I've looked at all these things in my career. So, you know, I don't know if I'm saying that I don't feel like I'm a failure, or that I've had so many that I forgot, but either way, to me, it's just part of the journey, and you have to embrace the good, the bad, the ugly. It's, you know, obviously people now with Instagram and everything is just beautiful, and
everything's like, beautiful.
People just think like, oh my God, you're living the life. You're an artist. You just wake up and paint.
The highlight reel. It's the highlight reel.
Yeah.
You're showing people that your highlight reel every day.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, yeah, it takes a little more than that. But
Oh my God.
but yeah, I think I've been fortunate not to have any and I've had, for example, I've had some health issues happen to me in the past, and
Mhm.
and even those I don't look at as failures. It's just like, okay, that was something that you just need to overcome and get to the next stage and work harder, whatever, smarter.
I couldn't agree more. And it's the perfect answer. I almost see failure as progress now, because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm doing something. I'm putting myself out there to fail, so I'm making
Right.
progress. And
Right.
I love you bringing sports into it too. I almost played college basketball at Gonzaga too, which they have a great basketball team. Like basketball is my life growing up. It was my life. And
Wow.
I did a complete 180 into art. I came down, I did acting and art, and it's talk about a crash course in failure. You know what I mean? Getting turned down all the time. So I think that's good. I think there's a little bit of a problem nowadays with younger kids being a little too sensitive to everything. And I think if you can't allow yourself to be hurt or to fail a bit, like how are you going to grow? How are you going to get better? So I love your answer. I think it's perfect.
Right on.
And then, well, we've talked about goals. I like what you said on one of your videos about you're always looking for the next big thing. You're going bigger and bigger and bigger. I think that's great. I think that's the mentality you have to have. But I'm going to go with advice to young man one. This can be any age. It can be life advice. It can be art advice. Looking back through all the things you've learned, is there a piece of advice you'd give yourself coming up?
Yeah, I think something I learned later in life is that you can't do it all. You have to be able to allow other people to help you. You have to allow, you have to be able to like give things away and and ask for help more than you think, because and I say this jokingly sometimes, but it's true. Like the word man one also has like this like has also been a problem for me, right? Because like a man one is only one of me. It's me. Like knowing what I know now, my advice to myself would have been I should have been man 100. So that I could have had like hundreds of people around me, hundreds of people doing the work. But I think that's the main thing I would have told myself, going back, was just like, you don't have to do it all. You don't have to carry everything on your own shoulders, because by doing that led to a lot of issues with me over time. One of them being my health issues, because I was sleeping like 3 hours a night because I had so much work to do, and I was just always like pulling all-nighters all the time, and I was eating really poorly, and because what's open at 3:00 in the morning, Jack in the Box.
And what's fast.
And so knowing that I could spread the wealth a little bit, so to speak, and just slow down and kind of enjoy things a little bit more. And so what if you don't do 100 things a day? Just do 60, right? So that would probably be my advice to myself.
That's great advice, and it's advice that I could take. I suffer from that too. Like I sometimes I'm like, how do I do all this myself? And I would love to offload some of this to some people, but that's coming up. That's coming up soon. But I'm also kind of a perfectionist. I'm like, they're not going to do it right.
That's the struggle.
That's the struggle right there. A little bit of surrender, I think we need, totally. Right?
Exactly.
Well, that's awesome, man. So I wanted to open it up to you real quick. Is there anything you feel like we left out? We can always do a round two at some point. Is there something you want to talk about, a plug or anything right now?
No, I don't. I don't know what else. We talked about a lot, and we could have kept going. But my main thing is like, I think you touched on it earlier, but I think art is just something that's bigger than yourself. And once we start embracing that and start letting go of our ego and being able to like not only allow people to enjoy what we do, but also turn it around and help other people, our art can be very powerful. So that's kind of my going away message, is just like, all the artists out there, is just like, understand that you're a special person because of what you do, whatever type of art you do. And, utilize that for the good, and put it out there. And it's amazing how much impact your art can have. And then if you back that up with being a good person and doing other things, it's it's even tenfold. So that's my kind of last bit there.
That's so true. I love that. I love that about what you're doing. I love your message and your art. I think so much of any artist growth, but mine personally too, happened when I started embracing that it wasn't just about me. It's like, it's my art, but it's also, a community of people, and like, giving a little bit of props to other people, like building them up, bringing a community in. That's kind of what I was trying to do with this podcast. So I think you're right on. I love what you're doing. Where do people find you other than the streets of LA? Like, you can find you everywhere. But where do they find you online if they want to like give you a goog?
Yeah. So obviously go to manone.com, and that's MANONE.com. And then on social media, everything is Man One Art, MANONEART. So you can find me on Instagram, on Twitter, on whatever. I'm on all those social media platforms, even like TikTok that I rarely use.
Yeah, I know. I joined TikTok too, but I haven't done anything. I'm like, I don't know. We'll see.
It's good. You know what it's good for? It's good for quick editing of videos. That's what I like it for.
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, and I guess Instagram's trying to keep up with that with the reels now, right? Isn't that a little their answer to TikTok?
I guess. So you can find me at Man One Art on all those social media platforms, and then also I have crewestshop.com, and which is an extension of crewest.com, the overall company. And like I mentioned before, Not Real Art. We have a whole bunch of programming there. Even though I've been on hiatus from the podcast for the last year because of all the stuff that's going on with me, I'm about to jump on that real soon, but my partner's been holding it down. So you can go to notrealart.com and check out the podcast and all the other stuff we do.
I was going to ask you about that because I put on a couple. I didn't have time to do a lot because I was looking at all your videos and stuff, but I heard there was another host on there. So you were originally hosting too, like co-hosting or what?
Yeah, So my partner is Scott, goes by Sourdough. It's his child. This whole Not Real Art thing is his baby. But we started the podcast together, co-host, and then last year with what happened during the pandemic and everything, and what was going on with me, I had to take a kind of some time off. So he just kept going at it, and now I forgot how many episodes we're in, but we're over 100 episodes or something.
You got more than me.
And he's really doing a great job with it. But, we love, it's basically what you're doing is what we like to do as well, is invite artists and talk about, business and art and culture and everything else, because, voices like this are needed, because we didn't have this growing up. Imagine when you were 18 years old, the information you could have got just on a podcast like this,
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying all the time on the podcast. I'm like, I created this because it's something that I wish I had.
Exactly.
Coming up, that's it. So it's called Not Real Art. So check that out too. Not Real Art podcast. I'm sure you can find it pretty much everywhere.
Everywhere.
Apple and everything. So Man One Art, Not Real Art podcast. And it has been awesome talking to you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
Stick around because we're going to talk a little bit afterwards, but we'll say goodbye to everybody here. But thank you so much for sharing. I love your art. Everybody check out the world famous Fauvist street artist, Man One.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right, peace.
All right, talk soon.
This has been the Living Artist Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I just want you to know that I appreciate you being here, and I'm grateful to be in your ears. Your art and creative life on this planet is meaningful, so thank you for sharing it with me. If you like this podcast, whatever platform you're listening to it on, please subscribe and share it with your friends. You can also leave me a positive review to show your support. This helps me to reach more people with the algorithmic magic and keep the show going strong. If you want to see more of what I do and check out the art that I create, you can visit my website at www.pmsartwork.com or follow me on social media everywhere at PMS Artwork. That's it for now. See you back here next time.